going to have Dr. David Jones, the director here at the Paul Robeson Cultural Center. He's going to give us a welcome on behalf of Rutgers, New Brunswick, and we'll go ahead and get the day started. So, Dr. Jones.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Let's give it up for the Institute for Social Justice, right? We're delighted to host this event here at the Paul Robeson Cultural Center, the historic Paul Robeson Cultural Center, here today at Rutgers, New Brunswick. On behalf of Vice Chancellor Dr. Felicia McGinty and the Chancellor's Office here at Rutgers, New Brunswick, I welcome you to Rutgers University. I welcome you to the Paul Robeson Cultural Center. This is a center that was founded in 1969 on the brinks of social and civil unrest in our country that was targeted towards Blacks and African Americans here at the university and things that they were experiencing on college campuses in the height of the civil rights movement and racial injustice. And here we are in 2018, still fighting for racial justice in America. And so this center was important then, and this center is important now to our students, to our community here at Rutgers. This is a home away from home for our students. It's a home away from home for our staff, our faculty that engage with one another through programming, through the different initiatives that we offer here at the center. So I hope you take the time to enjoy this space today while you're here. We've left you brochures so you can become more familiar with what we offer here and what we provide our community. And we welcome you to this space today and any other time you're in the New Brunswick area. This is a community that we call home, and we welcome you into our home at any point. And so I think the partnership that we've established with the Institute for Social Justice, most importantly with Mr. James Williams, has been a very critical one. It started last semester where we had the opportunity to host the screening of the Khalif Browder documentary, which led into a discussion about mass incarceration, particularly among Black males, and then also led into a discussion about the campaign that the Institute for Social Justice was working on to end mass incarceration here in the state of New Jersey. And so from that initial program, which drew over 200 students, which was a remarkable turnout on a cold, rainy night in November, it was an opportunity for us to be able to continue to expand what we see today. And so we're really delighted to host this program, the Social Justice Summit, and bring in folks from across the state at different colleges and universities to engage in this important talk. Paul Robeson once said, "The answer to injustice is not to silence the critic, but to end the injustice." Let me repeat that. The answer to injustice is not to silence the critic, but to end the injustice. And our work as social justice educators and change agents is a critical role that we play on our college campuses, on the communities that we serve, and the spaces that we occupy. And so it's important as we do this social justice work to be able to speak up and stand up for what we believe in, using our voice at any time. Being socially responsible. I think it's important that we be socially responsible. And what I mean by that is being able to engage in this work, right? And be able to foster equity and inclusion on a level where all identity groups are represented. And so a lot of times when we speak up and we speak out against injustice, we speak out against things that are important to us, things that matter to us. But if we're really gonna do the social justice work right, and we're gonna be allies towards creating change for a better tomorrow today, then we need to think about all the forms of oppression that are interconnected with one another in our society and how we show up to fight against that oppression. And so I challenge you to think about how you can recognize change today and how you can be part of that change movement on your campuses and in your broader communities. And so as we engage in this work today, as we engage in what we will take part in through the presentations that will be offered, I ask you to think about what you're going to do beyond today. What are going to be your next steps? What are you going to engage in beyond today? What are you going to learn from this experience that's going to make you a better social justice change agent through the work that you're going to do with folks in this room? Angela Davis once said, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept." And so we are living in a day and time where there are certain things that we cannot continue to accept. And it is our role as social justice educators to speak up and stand up for what is right in our community, just like Paul Robeson did, and just like many other civil rights activists did in their era. And so we want to be able to continue to carry on the torch and the legacy of those that came before us so that we can make tomorrow a brighter day for the people that come after us. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to engaging with you all throughout the day. Thank you so much.
So I'm not sure if James was coming back, but I think I can jump up now. So good morning, everyone. Good morning. So my name is Retha Ornatiri, and I am from the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, and I am absolutely thrilled to see all of you here on a Friday morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, on a rainy Friday morning, on Good Friday and Passover. So thank you so much. We are thrilled to be starting this college coalition. So let me tell you a little bit about the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. I actually have a few of my colleagues here, so I'm gonna introduce them. I have Ron here from our legal team. He's an intern. Sharon is here. Sharon, you wanna raise your hand? We also have Elizabeth here, who's our director. I see Princeton walked in the room. James is the powerhouse behind this particular program, and I think Madasra is here. And so we are absolutely thrilled. We thank Dr. Jones for opening up his doors in this wonderful space to start this dialogue. With what's going on in the country now, with all the young people who were out last week, 11-year-olds putting us to shame, showing us how to work, this is very timely that we come in today to talk about social justice and talk about the mechanics and how to make social justice work. So at the Institute, we actually focus on 3 different things. Well, let me back up a little bit. We are a legal policy and advocacy organization. We focus on bringing down load-bearing walls of injustice and social disparities. So we focus on 3 different pillars. One is criminal justice and juvenile justice, which is where I spend most of my work on, economic mobility, and civic engagement. And so I'm actually going to walk through the booklets that you have, your package, because it's critical for you to not just take it home, but understand what we have in this package, because this package is actually showing you the kinds of work we do and how we go about it. We have kind of a model and a method to our madness. So very first thing that we do is research. And so every campaign that we do, we have to do research and find out the data behind it. And so in your booklet, you will see for each of our pillars, there is a research booklet or research package that talks about the data behind each of those campaigns. So you will see that in our economic mobility campaign, there's a research document called Bridging the Two Americas. That is our Newark 2020 project. That project is trying to match 2020 folks in Newark to jobs. If you read this document, you will find out that of all the job holders in Newark, the folks in Newark, only 18% of the folks in Newark are actually working in jobs in Newark. Again, let me repeat that. Only 18% of the people who live in Newark work in jobs in Newark. So we're trying to change that equation. So our economic mobility campaign called Newark 2020 is trying to match 2020 folks to jobs by the year 2020. Our second pillar, which is our civic engagement pillar, has a campaign going on right now called 1844, and that's this report. And what we're doing in that space is trying to do voter restoration. And so there are over 100,000 people in the state of New Jersey who are disenfranchised and cannot vote. They may have they may be on probation, they are in jail, in prison, or they are finishing up terms there and they're still unable to vote. And so we have a campaign going on called 1844 No More to try to restore their voting rights. Now, the campaign that James and I work on is the 150 Years is Enough. That is our juvenile justice incarceration campaign. And so what we're trying to do with this campaign is to transform the juvenile justice system in New Jersey. So my colleague, Andrea McChristian, actually worked on this report about a year ago. And this report, and the data in this report informed our campaign. And so we are trying to close youth prisons and transform the juvenile justice system here in New Jersey to a community-based system of care. And so let me give you some statistics out of this data that I think is very important for you to understand, particularly in what's going on in the state of New Jersey. And so New Jersey has the highest black-white racial disparity when it comes to youth imprisonment. Black children in New Jersey are 30 times more likely to be incarcerated than their white counterparts. We're the number one in the nation, 30 to 1. Out of 225 young people who are in youth prison, I think there may be about 13 or 18 white kids in the prison. And so there's stark racial disparities that we're working on. In addition to it, there are 3 youth prisons in New Jersey. We spend $60 million on those 3 youth prisons and $8 million on community-based programming. 60 million to 8 million. So when this report came out, we were quoting $250K per year to incarcerate our young people. We were just looking at Governor Murphy's budget yesterday, and that's gone up. So it's actually $285 per year to imprison our young people. Can you imagine $285K? That's probably more than it will cost you for a 4-year education. And unfortunately, our youth prisons are half full. And in addition to that, we have high recidivism rates. So within 3 years, I think we looked at 2015 data, and within 3 years, 80% of the young people have been arrested again. Around, I would say 60% have a new charge, and about 33% are back in youth prisons. So what we have right now is not working. So we have a really extensive campaign going on right now. Once this report came out, we went on the road, right? We actually, which is a very important part of our institute, in addition to the data, in addition to trying to outline policies, we do a grounds up campaign to let folks know about our work and the data. And so we crisscross across the state, letting people know about what's going on in this data. And so you will see that in your package, there are policy information. You will also see information about how you can join up to our campaign. We've had all kinds of events where we bring in young people to come and talk about the talk about the campaign. We have a youth leadership program going on. We are very excited because now we're kicking off a college coalition to join our campaign. So thank you so much for allowing me this time to talk about the work that we do at the Institute. I will be here all day along with my colleagues to answer any questions you may have. This is a pivotal time in history. It doesn't happen very often where young people's voices are amplified and people are talking about what you young people are going to do to change this country. So grab a hold of this time. We were I was 18 in college and 19 in college at one time. It goes by real quick. So grab this time and use this to understand exactly what you need to do to make change happen. Thank you so much.
So, I'm James Williams. I'm the organizer for today. And first and foremost, I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up. For all my students back there, I need everybody to come on up. If you're here to attend this, these students, I see my TCNJ guys, come on up. Nobody's gonna bite you. Come on up. Let's have a seat so we can go ahead and facilitate this the way that we wanted it. So I started with the Institute last August, and I was sitting down, I was talking to my supervisor, Aretha, and she said, James, we need to get into the college space. And my background before this is in higher education, worked at several universities, and I said, okay, no problem. So I had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Jones, and we launched this, and then I had an opportunity to meet, I call her my shero, was Dr. Foster. She's shaking her head down at Monmouth. I mean, she's amazing. I meet Dr. Wilson up at William Patterson. So I've had an opportunity to meet some amazing educators all throughout the state. So when I was thinking about, how we can do this, I wanted to be something that was unified here in the state of New Jersey. I wanted to give you guys some type of platform, some type of mechanism where you could amplify the bandwidth, the passion that I know that you have about social justice. Some of my colleagues in the back, I've got state partners, we've got Drug Policy Alliance here, APN is here, one of my other buddies, Fred Fogle from Youth Advocates, is walking in, and I think they'll understand and agree with me when I say that there is no such thing as a social justice professional. We're just practitioners. Because the only requirement to be involved in social justice is passion. You have to have a passion for this. Just because you go to law school doesn't mean that you can do civil rights. You have to have a passion to want to speak for the hopeless, to want to help the disenfranchised. You have to have a passion if you're a social worker to want to heal and reconnect people that have been broken. You have to have a passion to actually want to bring about policy reform. So it's not your academic training that's going to make you successful in this space. It's your passion, your desire, your want to, the thing that nobody else can put in you. It has to be in you. So if you're here, I believe that you have a passion for social justice. You have that itch that wants to make society better. So what we're doing today is we're going to give you some of the tools that will make you a successful practitioner in this particular space. It will make you successful in your bandwidth. It will make you successful in your impact. So that's why you're here today. So this is step one. This isn't the finish line for what we plan on doing as it pertains to this college and university coalition. We've developed a logo. We're going to fill this thing out as robustly as we can. We already have the fall coalition already planned. Dr. Foster at Monmouth has agreed that we're going to take this and take it down to Monmouth in the fall semester. So we expect to see everybody here, even if you're graduated. It's time to road trip and we're going to go to Monmouth. And then next semester, we're going to find another school. We'll be at William Patterson because I'm going to get Dr. Wilson to sign on to that next spring. So we're going to keep this thing growing. We're going to take it from a 1-day to a 2-day to a 3-day to a week-long conference because you deserve an opportunity to be involved in this space. You don't have to be a professional. You just have to be passionate about this particular work. Dr. King was 26 years old when he took over the civil rights movement. 26. At 26, I could barely pay my cell phone bill on time. And he was responsible for an entire movement, for an entire people. He made this entire country look at itself and realize that they were failing. He had that passion. It wasn't because he was a preacher. It wasn't because he went to Morehouse. And it wasn't because he was a black man. It was because he was passionate about this particular work. So today is about giving you the kind of tools that will help you to amplify and expand that passion into your particular areas. And you don't have to dive into our 3 pillars. If you're passionate about immigration, please, we're going to have somebody from New Jersey Immigration Alliance. If you're passionate about drug policy, please go see Drug Policy Alliance. If you're passionate about poverty, if you're passionate about working with young people, whatever it is, hopefully I will have a representative here that can connect you. I also wanted to bring the resources to you. I didn't want you to have to Google Drug Policy Alliance. I didn't want to have you to Google APN. I wanted to bring them to you. I want you guys, for our networking and meet and greet, you guys are going to have the opportunity to kind of talk with them, sign up, and partner with them. You guys are partners in these relationships. You're partners. You're not there to just set up chairs. You're not there to just hand out flyers. You're there to bring your intellectual and your passion as capital to these particular organizations. And you should value yourself as such. So you don't have to wait until you graduate. You don't have to wait until you get a law degree. Right now is the moment. Right now is the moment. March 24th, I think the estimated number is over 20,000 young people all across this country marched and protested to bring about gun reform in this country. So my challenge to each and every one of you today is, what will you do? If an 11-year-old could stand before the entire nation and expose herself, allow herself to be vulnerable about the things that she's passionate about, what will you do? Now's your moment. Now's your moment. Not tomorrow, not when you graduate, but today. Today is your opportunity to seize it. So as we go through these workshops, I encourage you to ask questions. This is your space. This is your safe space. This is a judgment-free space. No matter what your question is, let us have it. Let us have it. Let's be respectful, because some of us may have differences of opinions, but we need to cultivate this, and we need to find a way for you guys to step into this full force, unequivocally. You guys need to own it. This doesn't just belong to us, the professional practitioners, because there are no professionals. They're only practitioners because we have to be passionate about this work. So if you're passionate about it, you can do this. Rosa Parks wasn't a trained civil rights advocate. She was just a woman that was tired of walking to the back of the bus. That's all she was. Medgar Evers wasn't a trained civil rights advocate. He was just a man in the South that said, this isn't right. Malcolm X wasn't a trained civil rights activist. He was a convict that came out and saw that something needed to change in the country. So if you go through and reflect over the individuals that we really cherish within civil rights, they had no training. They had no background. They were just passionate. That's the ingredient to being successful in this particular space. So today you guys are here, and I'm so thankful, because I often say you guys could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. It's Friday. You guys could have been heading home. You guys could have been doing anything, but you're right here in the Paul Robeson Cultural Center, and we're going to have a great time. We're going to have a great time, because after today, you guys are part of our network. My network becomes your network. Drug Policy Alliance's network becomes your network. APN network, they become your network. Youth Advocate Program, we all expand after today. You are on all our distro lists. When you have a program, that means we have a program at the Institute. That means that we're held accountable for showing up and supporting you. If you can road trip for a party, let's road trip for a rally. If you can road trip for a game, let's road trip for an educational forum. We can do this. We can be the change agent here in New Jersey. We don't have to wait for the right governor. We don't have to wait for the right legislator. Our CEO, he always talks about from the ground up. So you are the ground. You are the individuals right here, because nobody's going to care about New Jersey more than you. Nobody's going to care about the issues on your community, on your campus, in your neighborhood, in your home more than you. And today is the day that we unpack these issues. Today is the day that we find that lane for us, all of us, to be successful. Because though we're practitioners, we need your help, because we aren't getting the change that we would like to see. So now we're going to add more people. Now we're going to make this thing an army. We're going to make this thing an army, and you guys are a part of that. You are my equal. You are my colleague. You are my advocates. So today, hopefully you guys will take away from the information that we give, the opportunities to network, to connect with one another. And the goal is, once again, to continue to grow this. So we need for you guys to be truly invested, to truly buy in to the day. As they say, drink the Kool-Aid. Let's all take the plunge. This is the Morpheus moment. We've got the red pill and the blue pill. I can't remember which one took you out of the matrix, but that's the pill we need to take today. We need to unattach from the matrix. Today is our day. So whatever you guys need, I have representatives from Rutgers, New Brunswick. If you need something, Jasmine right here with the red shirt, she's my person. She will help you out. She doesn't like to be put on the spot, but she is, because she knows I do that to her, but she's amazing. But hopefully today you guys can enjoy this as much as I had in planning it. I've been sending out emails for a long time. I've been looking at this because I was terrified that I was going to let you guys down. And I didn't want that. I wanted you guys to have the kind of experience, the kind of feeling that I have every day when I go to work. So this is today. Thank you guys for coming, and we're going to go ahead and get started. You guys ready? All right. So I think I'm actually the first presenter. Isn't that ironic? So I did all that talking. I probably should have just shut it up like 5 minutes ago. So there's breakfast around the corner. If anybody has not yet eaten, please go enjoy yourself. We are going to start our networking and everything probably at about 10:45, 11-ish. We will have lunch delivered. If you're from Rutgers, New Brunswick, and there's a friend of yours that's not here, I'm holding you accountable to get them here. We need all these seats filled. We need all the food going. We need to hand out all the material that we have. So if you don't go to Rutgers and you have a friend that goes to Rutgers, get them here. Okay, so my role at the Institute is, I think my personal opinion, my colleagues may beg to differ. I think I have the best job at the Institute. I get to engage people right where they are. I get to get on the road, I get to talk to people everywhere all across the state, and really we've met people all across the country. And that to me is the most interesting piece about what I get to do. I get to go to people, where the issues are, where the concerns are, not over the phone, not via email. I get to hop in my vehicle and come to talk to students like you all across the state, community members, faith leaders, you name it. I get that opportunity to kind of engage with you guys. So that's what I get to do. So my keys to successful community organizing: know your message, develop a way to educate your target audience, identify your target audience, find ways to engage your audience, develop a plan to mobilize your audience, and keep your audience involved. So that sounds like a lot of audience, right? So it pretty much is. And you guys are my audience today. So know your message. So the keys to going out and doing grassroots work is you have to know your message. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to be informed on it. At the Institute, we do tons and tons of research. Ron here does tons and tons of research. Sharon does tons and tons of research. My institute twin is Princeton. He's a fellow back there. We started the same day. He does tons and tons of research. So that's what gives me the tools to go out and speak about this particular issue. So though I'm an African American man and I'm from Camden, New Jersey, I need to know stats. That doesn't do me good enough to just show up somewhere and say, hey, I'm a black guy from Camden, you don't need to put kids in jail. Okay, why? Well, because I'm a black guy from Camden and you shouldn't put kids in jail. Like, but what's going on with the kids in jail. I don't know, I'm just a black guy from Camden, and you should put kids in jail. So I have to know more than that. So I have to know my message. So I do as much studying as you guys do on my material, because every single day it changes. Every single day the government tweaks something. Like Aretha said, they increase that budgetary amount on what it takes to incarcerate youth here in the States. So now I have to retrain myself to say not 250, but 280. 280,000 is what it's going to take to incarcerate youth. So I have to know my material inside and out. Inside and out. So before you engage any group, organization, or individual, be sure that you are well versed on your core message. Our core message for the youth decarceration campaign, it is a racial injustice issue. 30-1 is a racial injustice issue. That is our core message. Everything else is secondary. The monetary amount, the 60 to 80, how much it costs to incarcerate, all that is secondary to the 30-1 ratio. New Jersey is #1 in the nation, not only in youth, but also to adult disproportionate rates for incarceration. 30-1 and 12-1. That is our core message. Everything else is secondary. That's what I lead with, no matter who my audience is. Faith groups, students, black, white, Latino, whoever, I'm going to start with that. Everything else comes after that. Be able to speak to your core message in an insightful, articulate, and educated way. You have to know that. Practice it. Do your spiel. I walk around the house talking to myself all the time. Just don't answer yourself. I was told that that's the sign that you start to know that you're like kind of crazy. I'm not. I don't know. My buddy back there, he's a psychologist. He could probably tell you a little bit better. But if you start to answer yourself, just answer educated. That's all they've got to do. If you're going to have that conversation, make sure it's a good one. Best practices for educating your audience. Before you schedule a meeting or make a phone call, understand that branding your message in a way that delivers your point is essential. Don't allow people to move you off your spot. If you're there to talk about racial injustice, you talk about racial injustice. Because as you engage people throughout your communities, even on your campus, they'll try to move you to bring you to a place that they're a little bit more comfortable. Well, is it really a black-white issue? Absolutely it is. Well, blacks commit more violent crimes. No, they don't. I won't be moved off my spot. I'm educated on it. So everything that you could possibly say to me, I've already had that argument with myself. I already know this message inside and out. So your goal is to ensure that you don't get moved off that spot, because you will engage people that don't want to hear it. If you're talking about immigration, well, immigrants do bad things in this country. Well, no, they don't. Have the data to speak to it. Don't say, well, I saw it on the internet. I hate that line. On Facebook it said. Please never say that. Don't ever lead with, on Facebook it said. Or Wikipedia, you guys are in college, you know credible like messaging sources. Princeton's going to speak to that a little bit more about credible places to report from, where you need to resource from. But I hope all of you know that if you ever probably take Dr. Foster's class and you cite Facebook, you're going to get an F. Dr. Wilson's class, if you cite Wikipedia, you should get an F. Because that's not a credible source. So speak from a place that's educated. Please speak from a place that actually has factual, research-based data. Developing your material to message delivery can be done several ways. Handouts, pamphlets, trifolds, all of that material, I can honestly say I don't have to worry about it, because there's a little lady around here in a green dress that does most of that for me. Where did she go? Elizabeth disappeared. She does all of that for me. I'm lucky. We have a director of communication. She makes sure that everything that goes out on behalf of that institute is properly branded. And we vet internally. We circulate our documents time and time again. It is like the most painstaking thing just to get one letter to go out, because I work with all these really smart people and they edit the crap out of everything that you create. Everything that you create. I got all these attorneys and Princeton's like, you know, you didn't cite properly. I'm like, look, man, I'm just trying to say hello. That's all this letter was supposed to say was hello. Like, hello is not supposed to start off with that. I'm like, dude, just put whatever you want to put in there. I don't care. But you have to develop that team. You have to know who those mechanisms are that can help you to vet your material, because sometimes you won't be able to engage face to face. The only thing you'll have is that letter or that email. And if that fails, you're done. Your brand, your message is now mute because I can't trust you as a source. I can't trust you as an advocate. You didn't even send me a properly formatted letter. So we have to know exactly what we're sending out there because that will be the face of your organization. You will be the front porch, as they say, for the Institute. I am that guy. The only person that probably travels more than me at the Institute is our president. So I know every single time I let my boss know, Retha, and I'm like, I'm going here, she expects for me to be the face of the Institute. She probably travels just as much as me too, I forgot about it. So we're probably like 1, 2, 3, depending on a given week. So you have to know that every single time you step out, you are the face. So that messaging is so important. Before utilizing your material, before that you have your material has been thoroughly vetted. Be sure that your message and brand best represent your organization and your particular initiative. Keep your emotion out of your message. Emotions aren't factual. You can speak to your personal emotions, but you can't put that on paper. So keep it fact-based and let your presentation show your emotion. You guys saw my emotion when I talked about passion. I won't talk about passion in our material, but I will deliver a passionate message. So that's what that's about. So make sure every single time that you know your brand and how you need to represent your organization. Who are you targeting? That's all very important. Once again, you want to see another round robin meeting? Come to a juvenile justice meeting and sit in and listen to how we talk about who we're going to target. That is once again the most painstaking argument that we ever had. How we're going to engage them, who we're going to engage, who's going to go, who's going to go to this meeting. I'm not going to that one. You should go to this one. I'm like, all right, so I'm not going to anything because we never know. We never know. Some meetings, the governor's meeting, I'm not going to be at that meeting. My president's going to be at that meeting. We have an attorney general meeting. I may be at that meeting, I may not. My supervisor, Retha, she'll be at that meeting. So you have to understand that who you target is essential. If you're doing social justice work, you might not reach out to Wells Fargo. That might not be your target audience, but if you're doing economic mobility work, Wells Fargo might be that particular audience. So sit down, start to think about who are the individuals, when you ever hear that saying, preaching to the choir? Mm-hmm. Who is my choir? Most of my partners in the back, they are my choir back there. When we start to talk about social injustice, I don't have to convince Renee from APN. She's like, James, what's the issue? Sign us up. Drug Policy Alliance, what's the issue? Sign us up. My buddy Fred from Youth Advocate Program, the exact same way. What's the issue? Sign us up. We don't need to know the details. We are your choir. So know who your choir audience is. If it's immigration, if it's diversity or representation on your community, know who your choir is. If you're the Black Student Union and we're not properly represented, I guarantee you the Latino population probably feels the same way. And the Asian population probably feels the same way. So if you guys get together, then you are now the majority population. So go find your choir, develop that relationship. Develop that relationship. Not every group is best suited to hear your message. Sometimes for juvenile justice work, I find myself in a room full of correctional officers. Awkward, right? They're like, hey, we need to open these prisons. They looking at me like, and do what with them? I'm like, send them home. And they're like, nah. I'm like, well, all right. Sometimes you won't have a favorable meeting every single time. Be sure to properly identify those who will be able to advocate for your cause in an effective way. You don't want people to destroy your brand. If I hand you my material, I need to know that you're going to deliver it in the right way. So we're very, very careful about who we engage with because we don't need our message diluted. We don't need it perverted. We don't need it manipulated because it will get back to us. Hey, man, I heard you guys are talking about privatizing youth prisons. We're like, whoa, that's not us. Yeah, well, I was talking to, this guy, Fred from Youth Advocates, man, and he was talking about privatizing prisons. I'm like, Fred Fogle? Oh, no problem. I'll give him a call right now. Fred, what happened? That's not what I said. Okay, cool. I know exactly what the issue is now. Because people will try to pervert your message. They'll try to take you out before you even get to the finish line. Like-minded groups and organizations often share the same networks, contexts, and priorities. That's how you expand your bandwidth. So as you guys do programs, as you guys do initiatives on your campus, we are now your network. We are that group that will bring community members. We are that group that will bring our state partners to your events. So that's what we're here for. And when venturing outside of your usual context, be sure that you have planned how to engage that group and utilize their particular skill set. Know what that group is. If you have to go to a bank and we're in the social justice space, how does that bank help fit your agenda? What can they do for you? And we have to know that. How to engage. When developing your list of potential targets, know how those targets should be engaged. That's face-to-face, that's via email, that's phone call. Whatever the case may be sure to know how you're going to engage. Not only that, who is going to engage? Some people in your organization aren't the person you send out. Everybody has a skill set. Know that skill set. Know it well. Some organizations may be better suited for larger presentations, so auditoriums, town halls, universities, facilities, banquet halls, etc. When meeting with some members of your target audience, intimate or personal presentations may be more appropriate. We don't invite the governor to big forums. We sit one-on-one with him to hash these issues out. He doesn't want to get caught in a room where somebody throws a question at him that he can't answer, and we understand it. So we have those kind of meetings, one-on-one, intimate. Know your target audience. If you get a chance to speak to your campus president, that's a one-on-one. That's a one-on-one. And you can brief him, hey, we want to have a larger forum. Here are some of the questions that we plan on addressing. Here's your read ahead. Okay, now he needs to prepare accordingly, but that first meeting needs to be intimate, needs to be one-on-one, because some stakeholders don't want to get blindsided. They don't want to get caught with that off-the-wall question. And as college students, you guys are the founders of off-the-wall questions. That's what you're expected to do. I was a college student. I said all types of crazy stuff to my campus president, and I'm certain that you guys do the exact same thing. I don't know what's going on, but so how to mobilize. Each group will have a particular way in which they are best suited to assist. If I needed to do a rally and we needed to march on Trenton, I am calling you guys. College students, you guys love the rally. You guys love the march. All I have to do is provide water and pizza at the finish line. And you guys will march from here to Florida, and I love that. That is your skill set. I love it about you. That's why we're here. We want to add you to our army. We want you guys to be a part of that marching force. So we love that. Know your group. There will be a group that will be engaged in the phone calls. There will be a group that will be engaged in the letter writing. There will be a group that will be engaged in the vetting of the documents, the media material. So there's a place for everybody. You just have to know your place, and we have to know how you can mobilize those assets. So some organizations are best suited in certain ways. Having a plan for each group to engage is key to proper utilization. This will also ensure that your mission reaches as many people as possible. That's the end game. It's all about expanding your bandwidth. You think about your Wi-Fi. We always, you go to one corner of the house and you look at your internet and you just see the bars going down. How can I expand my bandwidth? How can I make sure my bars reach every corner of the state? And for us, we do grassroots work. I am the bandwidth multiplier. That's my job. My job is to take our message to Summit, to Atlantic City, to Cape May, to Camden, to Trenton, you name it, I'm going. I am the bandwidth multiplier. That's my job description. That's what I do. So know your role and know how you can expand on that particular bandwidth. How to keep them involved. Now this is that crucial, as my boss would say, that critical moment in grassroots organizing. How do I keep you guys engaged? So we have a plan for you guys at the end. We have an ask of you guys. So we were talking about this, and we've been talking about this for months. What's our ask? How do we keep the college students engaged? And we kept scratching our head, and we kept scratching our head, and we were kind of worried because it was like 5 o'clock last night, and we still hadn't had this idea nailed down. I'm like, look, we're just gonna have to wing it, because I don't know how to keep them engaged, because you guys have so many different passions And me and my boss started to kind of ping pong some things around, and we're like, that's it. That's the magic sauce. So it's a secret. You guys will have to stay here till the end to find out. So if you have to leave early, we'll make sure you get the secret recipe. But you have to find ways to keep your people involved. And that's the painstaking, grueling type of thing. We send a lot of follow-up emails, a lot of follow-up phone calls. You have to constantly stay engaged. Dr. Foster and I, sometimes it's just, hey, how you doing? How's work on campus? We stay engaged. We have to stay engaged. We have to know what's going on. What's going on with your campaign? What's going on with my campaign? So we can know the pulse, so we can know the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of how this social justice spectrum, how the tide is going. If APN is having issues with the legislator, that's good for us to know, because that means we may have issues with the legislator. Or if there's a legislator in particular that's doing good work for us, you know what? Hey, Renee, this is who we're working with. They're giving us some traction. You might want to give them a call. That's what she's going to do. Hey, you might be pretty open to this idea. That's how you keep your momentum going. So you have to stay engaged. You guys are like the one-off generation. Like, you make one phone call and then they're off. But you have to stay connected to people, and that's more than just social media. This social justice space is intimate because it's about people's lives. So you got to pick up the phone. You got to get in people's faces and say, hey, what's going on? How you doing? How's your campaign? What's going on in the community? How are the police treated? How's your judiciary? How's the funding? All these kind of conversations have to constantly keep going on. They seem mundane, they seem routine, but it's needed. We have follow-up meetings with one another all the time offline. All the time offline. So that's key. Their continued involvement rests with your ability to properly assess the needs of your campaign and initiatives. So we got to a point where we said, January 8th of this month of this year, the governor announced closure. So we said, we got to continue to push. What's going to be our big push? I said, well, we got that college thing that we've been working on. Teresa said, make it happen. They're going to be the thing to take us over the top. We believe that you guys can be the thing that makes Governor Murphy, whether he wants to or not, sign into legislation the things that we want to happen as it pertains to youth justice. So she said, make it happen. I said, all right, no problem. Call Dr. Jones, hey, we need to have a coalition. Easy. Jasmine, get it out. No problem. Dr. Foster, I need some kids. We're bringing the bus. Easy. That's how this thing came to be. So when we said we wanted to expand our bandwidth, you were the group. So as you develop your campaigns, you need to find out who can help you expand your bandwidth and how to constantly keep them involved. So our goal with you is for you guys to take ownership of this space. You guys aren't here to pass out flyers. You guys aren't to set up tables. You guys aren't to hand out t-shirts. You guys are going to be at the table. You guys are going to be behind the mic. You guys are going to be in front of the camera. You guys aren't like backup singers. This is you. You are Bruno Mars. 24 karat gold. Singing. Is that it? See, I just ran out of time. So, all right. So, yep, we're right on time, actually. So, Q&A, questions, comments, concerns, swear words, whatever you need. Yes.
Are we going to have access to the presentation?
Absolutely. Yep, we can push that out to you guys. If you guys want some of this material, please let me know, and we can send it either to you individually or to some of your academic and faculty advisors, and they can disseminate to you accordingly. So yes, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Like, while organizing your initiative, which way did you find to be the most vital, like the most essential? Like, basically, which way was the most important to rally people together, to come together on a common goal, and
So, when you look at the history of civil rights, the most effective way of organizing. Okay, can you repeat your question? Say it a little bit louder for everybody.
I said,
Stand up. Come on.
Alright.
Let's vocalize. Put you on the spot.
Alright, cool. So I said, which way out of all of the tips that you discussed is the most beneficial to organize people together, to come together on a common goal, and to, best way to go and promote success?
So the Institute message and my personal message is grassroots. Grassroots is the most effective way of getting any of your initiatives off the ground. When you look at the history of successful civil rights movements or any movements in this country, whether it be women's suffrage, civil rights, you name it, women, you find that the successful way is to get out into the community, get those most affected by that particular issue, and get them on board. Whether it be door to door, whether it be forums like this, no matter what the campaign is, no matter what the initiative is, grassroots organizing has proven to be the most effective message time and time and time again. If you look at, not to get political, if you look at former President Obama's campaign, he was successful because he didn't ask for huge amounts of money. He did door to door. If you can only give me $1. You just give me $1, we can get to Washington. So grassroots, and this is where he started, community organizing. Right there on the basic, most fundamental level, right there in the city of Chicago, in the neighborhoods, in the environment of the people that were most affected. So if you want to do an initiative, my personal opinion and the Institute's way of doing things, we've got a folder over there from the ground up. That always works. It's never let us down. That's how we've gotten to this point right here, right now, as it pertains to our campaign. All our campaigns have been successful because we do it from the ground up. My team, Princeton, he works on the consent decree up there in Newark. They go door to door, flyers. It was cool. He bundled up, packed up, went door to door with the flyers. Madasra also, door to door with the flyers. So that's always our keys to success. Because we don't want to do policy from the ivory tower. We want you to know, you're that guy that came and knocked on my door. Yeah, that was me. Man, I appreciate that. I'm like, whoo, that was close. Sometimes you don't get positive reactions. You don't always get positive reactions when you knock on those doors, so you got to be prepared for both. Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Governor, that our goal is to get Governor Murphy to sign some of our policies into law.
Right.
Do we have any New Jersey legislators or anyone in the Senate who knows about this organization?
About my organization or this one right here we just started?
The organization.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Most of the legislators are fully aware of the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice. If they are not, I don't know who they are. But
Okay.
most of them know who we are because we're bipartisan. So we're not Democrat, Independent, Republican, anything. We work with anybody that wants to bring about the proper change in the community. So we engage with everybody because we want this to be a collective effort. We don't want to look one way or the other. If you're interested in progressive, innovative change within these communities, you're exactly the kind of legislator we want to engage with. Yes, sir?
All right. In your experience, are there any particular difficulties or hardships that you face in really setting up your campaign initially that maybe people who want to initiate a campaign might experience, just so that we can sort of wrap our minds around things that we might encounter along the way?
Absolutely. You're going to find that some within what you recognize to be your choir are some of the individuals that might not be your most effective, advocates. So sometimes when I say, you're preaching to the choir, you're going to find out as you get into these communities that not everybody is on board. For this juvenile justice campaign, I'll be honest, we've been to African American churches and some of them have said, them kids are bad, they need to be locked up. It's like, well, okay. And you have to be prepared for that because not everybody is going to be on board. So as you engage in these campaigns, be prepared that you're going to find dissension. You're going to find barriers. You're going to find individuals that plot to make things difficult for you. So you kind of have to start to vet that out beforehand. What if they say this? What if they say that? We have a lot of back and forth conversations before we engage with anybody. Yes,
I
ma'am.
was going to add to that. So it's good to talk to folks who are not always on board because then you can go back and change your message.
Right.
Right? Your message got to be on point. And so if the folks are not getting your message or getting it wrong, this is an opportunity for you to go back and look at your message again and tweak it.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
You mentioned something about economic mobility, and if you wanted to pursue that, you go talk to a Wells Fargo. But how does that conversation work, or how do you approach that? Being that that's one of the institutions that has historical ties to some of the oppression.
Initial email. Do they have a community outreach person or to identify on their website or even a local branch? You stop by, hey, this is what I'm working on. Can you give this material to the person that's best suited to kind of read it? And then you kind of look on that website, and then you find where these individuals will be at, and then you can start to kind of develop that narrative in a face-to-face. So if they're at a program like this and things like that, then that's how you can engage. Yes, ma'am?
In addition to it, you may be able to find a partner that has a relationship
Absolutely.
with that company. So in Newark, for example, we partner with the mayor, right? And so the large corporations in Newark have a relationship with the mayor. So you need to find a similar
Right. So that's the key thing. We don't do this work on an island. Like, our goal is to, once again, to collect individuals. The more vast your network, the more people, as you throw that initial email, hey, I want to reach out to Wells Fargo. Anybody have any connections? You will be surprised who will reach back and say, as a matter of fact, I go to church with the branch president here in Woodbridge, and you'd be like, amazing, can you get me a meeting? And that's how you expand that particular message.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I'm glad you brought that point up, because one of the things we did with our campaign is what we call power mapping. So power mapping is a tool. You go into a particular area that you want to impact, and then you find out who the power brokers are. And the people in that community will know who the power brokers are. So who knows the assembly person? Who knows the senator? And then who's the mover and shaker in that area? So use power mapping tools to find out who are the people impacting that community.
And I'll get that document also on how to properly power map, and I'll send that out to everybody here. So if you have not, I think my niece is still over there at that table. If you've not seen that little young lady at the table and she doesn't have your email, please make sure that she has it, so that way that all the information that we're talking about today, we can make sure that you guys actually get it. Yes, ma'am.
So I know you mentioned about like reaching out to those who are like-minded as you, like-minded groups, but would you also recommend reaching out to those who don't have like extreme conversely different opinions, but like those who have like slightly different opinions as you, so that you could like educate them on like your view?
Absolutely. So for our campaign, we do reach out to correctional officers. We do reach out to the JJC, that's the Juvenile Justice Commission. So we're actively engaged with them in cordial conversations. Can we call them cordial? Cordial conversations. So we do, you do. That's part of that narrative. That way you can know what the message is on the other side and adjust yours accordingly. So you do have to know both sides of the coin. So you do identify your choir, but you do also need to know who's on the other side of the aisle also. So that's a very, very great point. So do engage those individuals. Yes, sir.
How do you come together in like more broad coalitions with your organization and others? I know there's a Poor People's Campaign.
Right.
I think that'll be launched soon.
Right. So Renee actually has some information on the Poor People's Campaign. So that's honestly, that's how it happens. Like, we're connected with Renee, she works for APN, that's how those connections happen. So we actively stay tied into all of our state partners. You should see our email boxes. I mean, they're ridiculous. I mean, everybody's sending out emails on a massive level, so we're constantly getting the flow of what each and everybody's campaign is doing, all that kind of stuff. So once again, once you get tied into these networks, your email traffic will constantly fit in, and once you have an idea, that's how I got them to show up. It was like, hey, friends, can you show up? It's like, what time? No problem. You know, I didn't have to lure them in here with pizza. They just said they were gonna come. I was like, okay, cool. And we have pizza. And they were like, even better. So that's how we got some of our partners here. We'll take one more question, because I think next up is my twin at the Institute, Princeton. So who's any other questions? I think we saw one more before I close out. Yes.
So my question's like half formed. I was struck by the way that you started off your speech by talking about your passion, and I was wondering, like, what have you found successful in cultivating that passion in other people, or allowing like your audience to recognize and like join you in that?
Right. So a lot of for me, the social justice space, a lot of the individuals that I've seen that operate this, we humanize these particular issues. We don't allow them to just be dollars and cents issues. When we talk about economic mobility, we talk about the mother in Newark that can't afford to feed her kids. When we talk about criminal justice reform, we talk about the young man that was wrongfully arrested by police officers. So we don't allow it to just be data. We don't allow it to just be a story or a narrative. We talk about people. For juvenile justice, youth justice, we talk about children. So when you can tie them to a human aspect, the passion from people starts to become a lot more digestible, because then you start to realize, oh, this isn't just an economic thing, it's a people thing. Because if a mother can earn a livable wage, then things in that household get better. When police officers don't wrongfully arrest a young man, then he doesn't go to jail. If a young youth doesn't get incarcerated in Jamesburg, then their potential to grow in society is multiplied. So humanize, because social justice is about people. It's about people, and that's what we need to always identify with. Don't get caught up in the message of all the higher up stuff. Water it down to the basics. This is about people. And when you talk about people, then people can start to relate. When I talk about we're trying to free kids, you can see the look on people's faces. They're like, wow, those are kids in there. Absolutely. Now what if it was your child in there? And then people can start to say, okay, now I'm hearing you. Because sometimes when I just say black people are incarcerated, they're like, I've heard that message before, but I'm like, children are incarcerated. Most of them are black, but children, they're black children that are incarcerated. Then we can humanize the message, and that way people can digest it in a way that everybody can understand. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No? All right, so we're gonna have Princeton Hines up. He is one of our legal fellows at the Institute. He is a Columbia Law School graduate. We actually started the same day. He doesn't like all that fanfare, but he is absolutely amazing. He does a lot of our reports, a lot of our writing, things like that. So he's going to talk to you about best practices in writing your reports, best practices on how to engage your sources, things like that. Because as you guys look to do op-eds or anything like that, I want for you to guys know how to do it properly. You guys should be doing op-eds, you should be doing articles, you should be doing papers on these particular issues. He's going to tell you guys how to do it the right way, the most effective way, because the practitioner way is going to be different than the academic way. Because we do things different than on the academic side. And I think as some of the academics here can tell you that we do things a lot different. So this is all about the way we do it as practitioners. So my buddy, my twin, Princeton.
August 14th.
August.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me this morning. I'm going to see how to work this. Yes. So, my name is Princeton. Is this on? Am I like giving feedback? My name is Princeton. I'm an attorney with the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. As James said, I'm a recent Columbia Law. Y'all hear me? I'm a recent Columbia Law graduate. I'm a recent Columbia Law graduate last May. Last year I was also licensed to practice law in New Jersey, so I'm a baby lawyer. Oh, thank you. Wow, thank you. Thank y'all. So I'm a baby lawyer. I can like relate to a lot of the student struggles, but I will never feel them again. Soon y'all can relate, but it's not for me. So I'm just like very thankful to be here in this space and to see all of y'all, especially so early, because you know I'm hopped up on coffee right now, but it is very early. But it's so great to see all of you. You know, I think about, so I went to undergrad in Washington University in St. Louis. I graduated 3 months before Michael Brown was murdered. But even before then, you know, St. Louis has a long history of like oppression and systemic violence. So after freshman year, when I branched out of the WashU bubble, I really started to interact with St. Louisans, and I started to learn about the culture and the history and the racial tensions, and that really drew me, and that's where I learned you know, activism. I was drawn to social justice in college like so many people are, like all of y'all are today. So it's just really inspiring to be here and learn from your perspectives, share some of my work, and talk about, you know, I think James mentioned earlier, you know, the youth are it, you know, young people are it, students are it. Right now, we like James said, we just had the March for Our Lives, huge demonstration against gun violence and, you know, for gun reform. And we have to also, you know, give honor to the Black Lives Matter activists, who are mostly young people who have been doing this work for years in cities like Ferguson, which is right down the street from where I went to college, Detroit, Baltimore, my hometown of Little Rock, Arkansas. Little Rock in the house? Look at you. We know somebody from Little Rock, okay. We've driven through once. So also, you know, even going back decades, you know, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, integral to the civil rights movement of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. So just very inspiring to be here. Thank y'all for having me. I'm going to talk about advancing social justice through research and writing. James said stay on topic and vet your topic, so I'm going to try to stick to speaking about reports, but if you can't already tell, I kind of ramble, so I'm going to probably give y'all my life story. And I'm going to be brief because I hear lunch is next. Okay, let's get into it. So I'm not actually going to spend the presentation talking about the logistics of writing. You know, I took my research and writing classes and all of it. Like, I'm not going to talk about the actual sitting down and, you know, writing. Am I going to choose Google today? I'm just going to, you know, briefly go over sort of those stylistic, logistical things. So what is your format? I'm going to speak from my experience as a lawyer in this presentation. So I constantly am writing memos. As you know, we don't do litigation right now, but attorneys who do litigation write briefs. And of course, we at the Institute put out a lot of publications, especially reports, et cetera, et cetera. Where will you search? That's a matter often of personal preference. For example, in the legal world, Westlaw or Lexis. I gravitated toward Westlaw because of the interface and just the accessibility. But you see these things they do influence how you go about what your writing process is and how you think about your topic, because Lexis might bring up certain secondary materials that lean a certain way or have a certain kind of format that influences how you think. Westlaw might populate more quickly with other topics and other formats. So Westlaw, Lexis are like institutional, professional search engines. Of course, we all know Google. So if I'm starting out, you know, researching student loans in New Jersey, and I type that in Google, you know, I'm gonna see a lot of different things. Like James said, I'm not gonna, you know, if I use Wikipedia as a springboard to go to their sources, check out if those sources check out, and go from there. I put the library, I just discovered that existed. My first time literally setting foot in a library to do work was my second year of law school, because I had to get some books for my note, which is like a law school thesis, which I wrote on like how Supreme Court cases have changed public opinion on certain social justice issues such as abortion, interracial marriage, and voting rights or voting equality. I just thought it would be funny to include a picture of my process. But we all have our different process, how we organize our information, the drafts we use, the notes we take. So I like to make a little makeshift easel with a clipboard and like print out my supervisor's emails, your professor, whomever, and put it on a clipboard, keep it in my face on my desk. So, and I also write like in red, like numbers, like she asked for one, she asked, you know, the things my supervisor, he or she, they asked for, and keep that in my mind, because might lose it otherwise. So specifically about reports, as I said, the Institute enjoys a good little report. So I actually brought up this one that Retha, I'm like hearing my voice come back. This one that Andrea McChristian, our colleague, was the primary author on, Bring Our Children Home, Ain't I a Child, which obviously like goes back to the Sojourner Truth quote, Ain't I a Woman. So I like reports for a number of reasons. they easily lend themselves to graphics. So if you like look through any of the materials that you have, I'm sure you'll see not only like pictures, like pictures that are like portraits or profiles that sort of add a humanization or that kind of context to the narrative, but also they're good because they have graphics and charts that sort of, I guess, draw how you sort of think about what you're reading. So just yesterday I was reading two different reports on policing, and one of them engaged a certain consultant to make their graphics and do their data, and another one used a completely different entity. And as I was reading through both of the reports, I was just noticing how they presented these graphics. Really, one wasn't reading so intuitively for me. So that really affected how I digested the material. So that's something you think about as you're thinking about making your, the report as a whole package more accessible, which I'm going to talk about the language later. So also reports, I think a benefit of them is that they usually utilize endnotes. So because there's so much writing, so much, different formatting with the pictures and the graphics like I was talking about, you might not want a footnote, taking up space on your page for a footnote also. So an endnote is nice because it's at the end, you can turn to it, you know where they all are, and you can cross-reference them. Reports, and to a certain extent, papers and articles also easily lend themselves to being in series. So this is the first in a series. We just published our second in the Bring Our Children Home series as a part of the Juvenile Justice Campaign, and they're packaged together. Now it's a series of 2 reports. So that helps you, you can think about, is this one gonna be more about people's testimonials or profiles of individuals? Is this one gonna be more about the history of the issue? What's your narrative? How are you gonna structure your theme using reports that you're releasing in increments? Reports are often cited, so they seem pretty, they seem impressive, they seem very academic. They'll be cited in academia, policy work. Legislators like to refer to a report that was cited, grant proposals, things that you put out that you can speak to, we released this report. It's very important in social justice work to think about how you're getting your message out there and how you can package it, so you can make these sort of spaces in which people have been systemically ignored or exploited, so you can amplify their voices or give a platform to that issue. And I think they're just easier to read. I'm just holding it, brandishing it everywhere. People are always interested in our reports when we put them on materials tables at events. So be considerate in your language. So this is more about the writing part. This slide is more about the style. The next one is more about substance. So is your audience internal or external? So I like to think reports are both because, as I think James said, we always go through an arduous review process. So you're writing for your internal team and the feedback that you are anticipating from them. But of course, because it's a document that you'll put out into the world, it's an external document also. So you kind of have both of those considerations in mind. Is your audience going to be people who are in your field? So am I writing to other lawyers and advocates? Am I writing to the general public? Am I writing to funders trying to get that coin secured? I think that it's generally best, even when it's people in your own field who will get your jargon, it's best to be concise and accessible. You never know who's gonna read it. You never know how new somebody, if a 20-year lawyer is using legalese and I'm trying to read it and learn something, that's not good for me. I need it to be accessible for me also. So we at the Institute try to keep it very precise, very clear, and very punchy. And I always think, what's the easiest way to say it? We might want to say adequate, but is it adequate to just say enough? You know, something like that. On that same note, avoid euphemisms and jargon. So euphemisms, for me, it's a pet peeve when people are speaking a statistic that's specific to Black people, would say people of color. So are we universalizing our language and erasing a specific community in the process? And like I kind of said, jargon is that language that's very cabined in this professional world, and it's very institutionally based. And like I said, you may not know it even if you're in the industry, so just keep it very clear. So these are things and when I keep on saying keep it clear, keep it clear, keep it clear, I'm saying that because of the people, you're thinking of your audience and your style and your substance, which is this slide. Be intentional in your language. So I included 3 examples of, and not because I'm trying to give my own personal or the Institute's opinion, but just to kind of make you think about things sometimes we don't think about when we're just speaking. So at the Institute, it's our policy to say incarcerated people. Have any of you ever thought about why that might be better language than prisoner or inmate?
Is that, were you actually asking, or is that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I found that when I talk to people about this issue that don't know anything about it, if the word prisoner inmate is used, it's kind of, the stigma is really there, and it's kind of like a scoffing, like an inmate or a prisoner. It's not seen as human. So when you say like incarcerated people, it kind of humanizes it a lot more for people who don't understand the issue. So.
Yeah, people is in it, so you can't forget that these are human beings. This isn't a class of prisoners who are defined by the fact that they've been incarcerated or that they've committed a crime, you know? So thank you. So this is also one for, I put verses because I want you to think, not to say, you know, you should use this instead of, but economically disadvantaged versus low income or underserved. So, you know, do any of these terms that we just become so used to using in regard to the communities we say we serve, do they actually, you know, create a narrative of these people being a class of, you know, a needy class, a dependent class? How can we use our language to stay away from that? I put transgender instead of transgendered. So maybe 6 years ago, I took a class called Transgender Studies. And a lot of the things we were reading around that time, 2012, we're still saying transgender. So now in 2018, it's been made clear to, you know, the general population that the preference is to say transgender if you're referring to that population. So my point with this one was that you have to stay cognizant, you have to stay up to date on what communities are saying they want. That's important, obviously, in any advocacy you do, but especially with your language. You can't be an advocate for a transgender person calling them transgendered. You know, different populations, so the Black population throughout time, Negro, African American, Black. The way you decide to speak to them and whom you decide to listen to about what people prefer to be called says a lot about you and says a lot about your advocacy. If you're calling people American Indians versus Native Americans, why did you make that choice? To whom did you listen to make that decision? You know, these are just things to keep, so be intentional in your language. And be cognizant in your language. Stay, you know, aware of what narratives you're pushing. So I put the 4 states I've lived in. I was born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas. Who you already know. I'm very, where you're from affects how you think about how people talk about everything. So if people, talk about Bill Clinton from Hope, Arkansas, I get a little, what are you trying to say about my hometown? Because, or more concretely, if people talk about the Little Rock Nine, Central High School desegregation in a disparaging way, that's a part of my story and how I grew up. How people talk about Ferguson, Dred Scott, all these things that have happened in St. Louis affects me. How people talk about the gentrification in Harlem, because yes, I did go to Columbia Law, and if you write that a place is called Manhattanville or Morningside Heights instead of Harlem, what does that say about your advocacy and who you're listening to, who you're privileging, and who you're prioritizing? And now I'm in New Jersey, and y'all already know in Newark, one of the first things I learned, I went to an event and someone almost got jumped on for calling it a Newark riot back in 1967. You have to read the room, you have to know where you are, you have to be cognizant about the narrative that you are pushing. So I don't even know how long I've been talking, but I do want to leave y'all with my little contact information and a quote from one of my biggest inspirations in activism. Fannie Lou Hamer, who did a lot of work with students in the civil rights movement, was a big fan, along with Ella Baker of SNCC, like I said, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Nobody's free until everybody's free. And with that, I'd like to invite any questions you have, and thank you one more time for having us. Thank you.
For reports, what are some good strategies or initiatives to help promote or give credibility to your reports? Because you can write a great report, but if no one's out reading it, then what's the point of writing it? So what are some ways to promote it?
Right, that's a good question. Like speakers before have said, we do a lot of coalitional work. So we're blessed that we have like a large network statewide, and even partners across the nation that we can, when we have an event, when we have a report, we definitely do extensive reaching out for everything, events, publications, and bring our partners who may not be directly involved, but are interested in we'll promote our topics, like we'll promote theirs. I would say that that's the biggest thing. Like James said, we like to do a lot of face-to-face, person-to-person things. We take our reports to all of our events, and we do things on our websites. I think it's very important to have a multi-perspectival, multiple approaches to how you do it.
And another thing that we do is we might have a press conference, right? So if you're gonna have a report and it's an important report, you might wanna do a press conference and invite the media in and invite your partners. If it's an important, if you're pushing legislation in your report, you might wanna include a legislative team. And I know Elizabeth is here, she's gonna give you more detail about that, maybe some of your thunder. But press conference is a way of getting it out.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Eunice, and I had a quick question on your personal life. What inspired you to settle in Newark? What made you decide to fight for Newark youth?
Great question. I'll try to give a short answer. All of those places I've been, civil rights history in Little Rock, civil rights history in St. Louis, civil rights history in Harlem and other parts of New York. I went to law school, like I said, to be a civil rights lawyer, and I applied far and wide, pretty much only to civil rights places, even though that's uncommon to get a job right out of law school in that field. First, I should say that the work of the Institute was amplified by a previous internship that I had at the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, Incorporated. They have coalitions, they have a partnership. A supervisor there was able to point me to the work, and I was very open geographically, but I did have a preference for a place that had a strong civil rights history. So I could have been in Billings, Montana. I don't know if we have Montana in the house. It's no shade to Montana, but I could have been there. You know, Montana has less than 4,000 black people. That would have been a different experience than being in Newark. There's been, you know, just like so many ways. I don't even have to mention the rebellion, but so many ways that Newark has such a rich history and so much work to do, the state of New Jersey. So that was an easy choice, and it was an easy interview because I just jumped on the New Jersey Transit. Any other questions? Yes, thank y'all so much.
So, I'm gonna take now it's our time to me, this is the real important part, the piece that I thought would make this the most interesting. Once again, I wanted to bring you guys some of the individuals that honestly I feel privileged to have the opportunity to work with all across the state. So I'm going to allow some of our state partners and individuals that we've worked with on collectives to kind of come up, tell you themselves, tell you who they are, the work that they do. And during this meet and greet, you guys are not you're not allowed to just go back and sit at your seats. Like, I want you to talk to them, talk about the work that they do, get their business cards, get applications if you have interest in internships, jobs. This is the opportunity. Rarely do we have like a social justice fair, and this is kind of like a social justice career fair, because if they don't have the job you're looking for, I guarantee you they can find the person that does have the job you're looking for, that internship, that opportunity that you want to get involved in this space. I was fortunate. I was just moved back to New Jersey, and I just Googled like, hey, I want to do social justice work, and I typed it in. I'm like, hey, there's a Social Justice Institute, and I emailed Rita, and it was like, hey, you want to have an interview? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm here. But once again, this was less than a year ago, so I'm thankful for that opportunity. So all my partners, please come on up to the front. They're going to give some introductions. You too, Sarah, come on. Yes, you. So they're going to introduce themselves. This looks like the usual suspects lineup. So you have the floor.
My name is Amos Cayley. I'm the state coordinator for a coalition called the New Jersey Campaign for Alternatives to Isolated Confinement. We're trying to end, that's a really long name. We're trying to end solitary confinement in New Jersey. All right, okay. Cool. So our coalition is based everywhere in the state because our coalition partners include dozens of organizations. It's a coalition, it's not an organization, but it includes dozens of organizations, including the Institute for Social Justice, as well as the ACLU, as well as the American Friends Service Committee. TJ in the back has worked with us before through the American Friends Service Committee. Anyway, we have lots of initiatives. We do public education events. We do lobbying of legislators. We do social media advocacy, but primarily our main feature is that we have a Survivors Bureau, and that's a group of people who come together who have experienced solitary confinement directly, right, and whose families have experienced it directly. And so our whole initiative for this whole year is to advance a bill that will effectively end solitary confinement in New Jersey, but our campaign is going to be based on highlighting those voices that would counter the previous governor's voice that said we don't have solitary confinement in New Jersey. So if you're interested in learning more about solitary confinement in New Jersey, as well as about the coalition and the effort that we have, we do also have one opening that we're looking to fill in a media sort of capacity. So I have no materials in the back. I have a few business cards in my pocket. I'll be here for probably another hour. Thank you, James, for inviting us. Appreciate it.
Hi everyone, my name's Amika Talia. I work for the Drug Policy Alliance. So we're a national organization that works to end the war on drugs. and we do this work in New Jersey as well. And so that's a mix of criminal justice issues, like making sure that if marijuana legalization happens in New Jersey, it happens in a way that's centered in racial justice. It's about parole reform. It's about making sure that our criminal justice system is more fair than it currently is. And then on the public health side, we do a lot of work around reducing the harms of drug use, so making sure there's things like Good Samaritan laws in place, making sure that something called naloxone or Narcan that you might know about, which is an opioid overdose antidote, is available to people. And we're always thrilled to have people involved, so please come to the back. I have that big red banner that you can't miss. If you're interested in getting involved, let me know.
Hi, my name's Sarah Walco, and I'm the Director of Education, Public Programs, and Community Outreach at the Visual Arts Center of New Jersey. So we're really focused on the arts and how the arts can be a catalyst for healing communities and for social justice and a lot of issues. We are particularly focused on some of the innovative arts education programming with English as a second language learners and basically art as a tool for other issues, social justice issues and community-based issues. And we recently did our first Art Educators Symposium with the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, so really trying to give our educators tools to bring into the classroom on how they can teach students how to be advocates for themselves and tell their stories through art. I mean, one reason that art touches us all is because it's our space to tell our personal stories and to make the personal universal and the universal personal, and that enters into social justice issues when we talk about when groups become dehumanized. If you keep the human face, if you keep the story and you keep the personal story and you touch people with the personal story, that can at least eliminate that very first dehumanization of a category of people. So we're big believers in that, and we also big believers in giving people creative tools so they can go out and tell their own stories and create cultural mythology. We need our mythology, as we've been seeing rise a lot in movies like Black Panther and other kinds of things. We need these cultural mythologies, and they exist in the art world. So that's what we do. I'll be around all day, and we're absolutely always looking for interns, and there's always job openings available at my organization, so please come talk to me. Thanks.
Hey folks, my name is Matt Cordero, and I want to address the first kind of elephant in the room. I'm only wearing these sunglasses because I need them to see. I broke my other glasses, and these are prescription. I promise you, I don't think I'm that cool. Although, but anyway, as I said, my name is Matt Cordero, and I'm here with the New Jersey Student Power Network. We're a network pretty similar to y'all, bringing together student organizers and activists from all over, this great Garden State. If you are interested in connecting with other folks working on immigration issues, environmental issues, voter rights, pretty much any type of student issue that you can think of, and want to be plugged in with folks from other campuses, come talk to me. Also, if you're interested in student activism, you want to plan a sit-in or rally on your campus. You want to talk about how to effectively organize your group on campus, or you want to take over your student government. Totally down to help any and all of y'all plan things on your campus. I'm also a Rutgers alum, so I'm pretty happy to be here back in the Paul Robeson Center. Paul Robeson, I don't know if you all talked about this before, but is the man, and you all should definitely take some time before you leave to learn about a great singer, athlete, civil rights lawyer, and just all-around social justice advocate who is really a pioneer for Black liberation and the liberation of all peoples back, in a time where that was frowned upon. So that's my quick Rutgers plug. But again, if you're interested in student activism and student organizing in New Jersey, I would love to talk with you. We have internships too. But yeah, thanks a lot.
Hi, Good morning. I'm Renee Kubianis. I'm fortunate to be the Executive Director of the Anti-Poverty Network of New Jersey. First, I want to thank New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and everybody else involved in putting this together. This is awesome, and thank you for being here and your interest in these issues. We were founded in 1999 by 3 statewide activists who really saw the need to bring people together around different issues of poverty, and we organized around housing, hunger, and economic empowerment for many years because these issues are connected in people's lives. We can't just talk about them and work on policy solutions in silos. We have to work in a more comprehensive way around all of these issues. And I certainly see all social justice issues as interrelated, and that they all kind of boil down to economic reasons for the oppression, the injustice, or the exploitation that's happening, right? And so we certainly work with the Institute and others, many others, and including folks in our network, and the Institute's a member of the Anti-Poverty Network as well. We offer internships. I should also say that in July of 2016, we also added structural racism in addition to housing, hunger, and economic empowerment in terms of our focus areas, because we released a report called The Uncomfortable Truth, Racism, Injustice, and Poverty in New Jersey last September. I have a few copies with me, so I don't have a lot, but we do have PDFs online, and more importantly, we wanted to have real community stakeholder forums and include people who are impacted in these conversations towards the about 100 solutions that are identified throughout this report and how we can end structural racism in our state. And I can tell you more about those forums, including our one coming up April 21st, if you come visit me at the table in the back. And lastly, I just wanted to say, I like this quote by Fannie Lou Hamer. I also like the former great blues artist Solomon Burke, who said, "If none of us are free, if one of us is chained." And a quote that's guided me in my practice as a social worker for the last 15 years comes from an Aboriginal activist group that goes, "If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." And so I hope you join us. Thank you. And we offer internships.
Hi everybody, my name is Austin Moriel and I'm the Program Director for Neighbor Corps Reentry Services, and our work is focused on keeping individuals who are coming out of Middlesex County Jail from returning to jail. And we are a teeny organization, and we do not have any jobs currently available, but we always need volunteers. The program is actually based on a pool of volunteers, and our volunteers work alongside with our participants and walk along with them in their reentry journey, connecting them to community resources, providing mentorship and guidance and support, because research has shown that if someone who is trying to reenter society has a supportive team on their side, they're far less likely to end up going back into jail. I'll be in the back, probably dwarfed by the Drug Policy Alliance sign, but I've got some flyers and business cards and a email sign-up sheet, and if you give me your email address, that doesn't mean you're committing to volunteer. It would just, I can send you some more information about us. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is John Keller. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach for an arts organization called Collab Arts. We're based actually right here in New Brunswick, Piscataway, Highland Park area. The mission of our organization is to link artists with other social advocacy nonprofits and provide the resources for those kind of two entities to develop what we call new and transformational work. One of the sample projects I actually brought, and they're up near the entrance now, are a couple of sample posters from a project we did directly with New Jersey Institute of Social Justice and Youth Advocate programs, in which we worked with young people who have experiences in the juvenile and family justice, family court system, in providing resources and ways for them to be able to express themselves. That exhibit is now actually on a tour at the moment. It was at the State House in Trenton, but we work with organizations wide-ranging as the Watershed Alliance, Lower Raritan Watershed Partnership. We work with New Jersey Pride Center and their transgender support group. So we have a pretty wide range of projects happening at any one time. I also teach here at Rutgers. I teach theater for social development, which is basically how to learn how to do all of the stuff I just talked about. And I'll be here. I have some information. Happy to chat more with anyone who wants to. Great. Thanks a lot.
Hey everyone, I'm Hera. I'm with the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, and we're based in Newark, New Jersey. We're an alliance of 40 organizations, including the Institute for Social Justice, ACLU, American Friends Service Committee, and we are committed to pushing for immigrant-friendly policies in New Jersey at the state level. So what that looks like in 2018 is our campaign for driver's licenses. It's called Let's Drive New Jersey. We're trying to push for a state-specific license that will benefit over 500,000 residents in New Jersey. And the second policy focus is a fair and welcoming policy, or for New Jersey, or as we know, sanctuary policy for the state of New Jersey. So the local law enforcement and officials in New Jersey will limit their cooperation with ICE. So it's really a visible work. We are looking for interns right now for the summer and for the fall. We are a small, growing organization. Right now, we're 3 staff members, and I just joined in January. And the last staff member joined last year, so we are hoping to continue growing. So it's a great time to join us. If you do intern, you'll be working on helping us do grassroots outreach as well as legislative outreach. So we work with our members to promote our campaigns on the grassroots level, but also we are meeting with legislators all the time. So if you're interested in that type of policy work and you want to learn more at the state level, come see me back there. I have a sign-up sheet. Yep.
So I think we're at that point. And I forgot to do this morning just to let you guys know how diverse the crowd is. So can my Monmouth University students, can you make a little bit of noise so we can know who Monmouth is? There we go. Can my William Patterson students make some noise? There we go. Rutgers Camden? There we go. Rutgers Newark? Here we go. Did we get anybody from Princeton? Princeton was supposed to come. How about Princeton Hines? Okay. Did we get Montclair? Did Montclair make it? Montclair didn't. I think I had one student from NYU that was registering. Did NYU actually make it? No. We have Ocean College?
Not yet.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Let me see. TC&J. There we go. There we go. TC&J. All right. I mean, you guys already know who's Rutgers, New Brunswick. There we go. Outstanding. Is there any schools that I didn't say that are represented here today? No. So. The Ohio State University. Yeah, he's that guy back there. He doesn't count. So if you guys are interested, if you guys are undergrad, I'm going to put them on the spot. Dr. Foster, can you please stand? She's from Monmouth University. She's in the sociology department. So if you guys have aspirations about graduate school or continuing education, please reach out to her. Dr. Wilson, please stand. He's with William Patterson University, so please get connected with him if you have goals and aspirations of continuing education and William Patterson is on your radar. Barring nothing else, now is the networking time. So grab some pizza, talk to my partners, mingle with one another, and then we will reconvene. So we've got an extended amount of time, so there's plenty of pizza. Go enjoy. Part 2, we will try to keep this as energetic and as energized. We know you guys are full of pizza and hopefully some vegetables and soda, so I gave you guys a terrible meal, but I knew what you guys would eat. Next time we'll do some catering and we'll do like some chicken and spinach and Brussels sprouts, all that healthy stuff. But this is my colleague, Mudassira, and she's gonna talk to you about effective event planning, and she is kind of like the spine of the Institute. She works pretty much on everything. She's gonna blush and turn away and act like she doesn't, but I can go to her for anything from event planning to coordinating travel, to funding, to pretty much everything. This is the one thing I asked her to do. She pretty much could have presented on a laundry list of different topics. She is a Rutgers graduate student.
Yes,
Yes,
I'm actually attending right now.
So she's a Rutgers graduate student, so she is a Rutgers student also, so.
Newark.
Newark.
What?
So please give her your undivided attention. If you do have to kind of shake out some of the sleepies, stand up, walk around, grab a bottle of water, please don't fall asleep. I do have my professors here. We do have some interesting ways to keep you students awake. We don't want to utilize those. They're diabolical and dastardly, but we will if we have to. And that's about it. So I'm gonna let Madasra do her thing.
Thanks, James.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Madasra Manier. I'm a program associate at New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. I started my job at the Institute last April, so it would be a year for me this April coming up. And a little bit about myself. I graduated from Rutgers Newark in 2015, and I'm actually a current graduate student, Master's in Public Administration from Rutgers Newark. I only have 2 classes left. Yes. So, yes. And then today I'll be talking about how to effectively conduct event planning. I know that as a graduate student, as an undergraduate student as well, I didn't really know a lot about event planning. And then also, since we work for a social justice organization, right, we know that we're the generation to bring a difference. So in order to do that, we need to plan events to get our message out. So that's basically the reason why we wanted to have this presentation. So a little overview of the presentation. We're gonna describe the goal of the event. We're gonna talk about how to create a timeline for your event, defining a budget, how to pick a venue, catering, communications, what you should do the day of the event, and what you should do after the event. So, how do you define the goal of your event? These are some of the questions that you should have in your mind when you're defining a goal of your event and planning your event. That's the first thing that you should do, which is, what is your event going to be about? What is the purpose of your event? What do you want the end result to be, and how are you going to achieve this? Be very concrete. So the reason why we plan an event is at New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, I'm just going to give an example. The reason why we plan events is, one, to have community outreach, right? To share our work with the community. So like, James mentioned in the beginning, our CEO, we really believes in working from the ground up. So we know that the community is the one that's gonna create a difference. So we work with them the most when it comes to planning events. That's what we plan the events for. Creating a timeline for your event. In order to make your event successful, you need to create a timeline. What that means is that you need to connect with your team members and have a meeting to create a timeline for your event. You need to create, have a folder. I don't know, we're like the tech generation as well, so we work a lot with computers. And so you need to create a folder on your computer or a drive where you keep all the electronic files pertaining to the event. You need to create a contact list of all the emails account and event contacts. So we work a lot on Google Drive. That's like the technology that we use. So, whatever you guys prefer. You can have like an Excel sheet or Word document, have everything so that you can go back and forth to plan your event. So this is actually an example of a timeline that we personally use. I know this is hard to read, but I'll just go through the steps. So the first step is that, since I work really close with the legal team under economic mobility, criminal justice, and civic engagement, they're the ones that draft the idea, and then we actually have a meeting with our communications director, who's here. She's actually going after me. Me and Princeton, we work really close with the legal team, where we set up a meeting to create a timeline for our event. So the third step is that once the date is finalized for the event, we confirm the NJSJ's attendees, so other team partners. if they can attend. If so, then, we designate tasks such as helping us to set up for the event, registration table, information table, if they can be there, present, and like welcoming the guests. The fourth step is that we obtain contact information for the panelists, if we're having panelists, or keynote speakers. So we get their phone numbers, email address, and email addresses as well, so that the day of the event, we actually send them a reminder email or a text message or a phone call, so that they're aware that they need to be there on time, and there's not like a confusion, last minute confusion. The fifth step is that we schedule a prep call before the event. So a week before the event, we schedule a prep call with the panelists and other event participants to go over the agenda for the day of the event. And then sixth step is that we actually go over to the event space about a week before the event is scheduled to figure out the room setup. So what that means is that we go over the contract and invoices, how many tables we need, the setup of the room, the size and the quantity, if we need chairs, food, beverages, information table. And then seventh step is ongoing communication protocol. So my colleague, Elizabeth, she's great with that. She normally sends out press release, press advisory. She sends out flyer invitations to all the contact list, community contact lists that we have. So we have a community organization contact list consisting of 150 to 200 organizations. So we normally send, after the date is finalized, we send them our flyer, so that's outreach work where the community members know the event that's taking place, so that they can be there present at the event. And then last step, what we do is, after the event is over, we send follow-up emails to the members that participate in the event, just as a thank you email, for participating at the event and taking their time out to support our work. So the next step is to define your budget. That's actually one of the main component of planning an event. You need, before securing space, catering speakers, any logistics, you need to make sure that you have a set budget for your event. And that means that you need to keep track of all the expenses as you go along, and keep all the receipts for accounting purposes, and also just have an extra budget, for future expenditures. Raising money for your event. I know that a lot of us, for college students, we don't have a lot of money to plan an event. So in order to do so, this is one of the things that you can do, how to raise money for your event. One thing is sponsorships. So as an example, I can use, we have our gala, NJSJ gala every year, where, we have a invitation card where we put sponsorship packages. So for example, if the whole organization plans on attending, then they can provide us a certain amount of money to book that table, so that all of the organization can come in. So this way, we're getting the money back. And then donations. You can ask a lot of people for donations the day of your event. Admission fees, have a $5 admission fee for the day of your event. Vendor booths. And then lastly, you can team up with a group who can successfully help you to plan your events. And then basic stuff. So how do you pick your venue? You need to consider your event's goal. Does the venue fit your goal? So for example, NJSJ, we host a lot of community events, and there are 5 wards in Newark. So we make sure that we host events in every ward, just so we can get the community members to come in and support our work, and we can also attain their feedback. So what we do is, we have a list of venues where we go, or either go or give them a quick call and ask them how many people can fit in that space. And based on that, that's how we pick a venue. You need to make sure if there is any charge, there's any cost for the venue. which are like, extra charges, if there's a cancellation fee, if the price can be negotiable, if you can get any discounts, or if there's a deposit required. So far, since we're like a nonprofit organization and we work for the community, we've been blessed where we don't really have to pay for the venue, but at the same time, we do give out like donations for the venues that we pick out, just so we can have that future relationship and that partnership in order to have future events at that place. If you're selling admission tickets, will it attract the audience? Is it accessible? Can people, people with special needs, can they come in? Can they access the venue? Are dates flexible? Normally we host events after 9 to 5 because, we realize that people have work, they have 9 to 5 jobs. So we normally host events after 9 to 5 from 6 to 9 so that we can get as many community members to come in for our event. Is the venue size appropriate for your event? So is there a technology, do you need technology? So is there like a setup for technology? Is the space big enough to fit up around the people that you want to come in? Is there parking? And then catering. Does the venue cater, or is outside catering allowed? And if you need a venue permit. So the next thing is catering. That's a huge part of hosting an event. You need to have food to attract people. That's, we learned that's one of the things that attract people. So you need, in terms of food, you need to make sure is the food appropriate for your event. So for example, we hosted a lot of our events at church space, and then some of the churches don't allow meat or anything like that. So you need to keep that in mind to make sure that you're respecting your venue, the place that you're hosting the event, so that people can come in and eat, but at the same time you're building that relationship with the people. Is the budget, what's the budget per person, including taxes, gratuities, and other charges? Keep that in mind for your budget when you're planning your budget. What's the budget per person? So do your attendees have any special dietary needs? Always have 2 options, meat and like vegetables. There are a lot of people that don't eat meat. And then also compare your caterers before selecting one in terms of pricing, food choices, and delivery fees. Just again, just to keep your budget in mind, this would be really helpful. Promotional events. So you need to promote your event in order to make it a successful event, right? So how do you do that? You promote your event. So like I said, as with any advertising, your message should be clear and concise. So these are the 4 questions that you should keep in mind, which are: what is the goal of your event? 1, and where is it happening? Why do I want to go as a community member? What do I have to do to attend? So that, as an example, I put up our flyer that we normally create for the community meetings. So this is actually our flyer for one of the community meetings that we hosted. So we put the reason why we're having this event, which is like, if they want to learn more about community policing, come in and learn about our work. We put the date, the time, what place is gonna take place at, and then at the end we put, like refreshments, food will be available. Don't forget to put logos of the partners of the venue that you're hosting your event in, just so people know. Again, this is to build that partnership, that long-term partnership, and also it looks nice that that they know that they're being more what's the word? They're being more, I don't know the word. Recognized. There you go. Thank you. They're being more recognized. Communications. We know that advertising is expensive. So if you have a budget for advertising, use it wisely. Spend where you will get most out of your budget. The first thing to consider is your target audience. Where are they? That's where you want to advertise. So we know that at our events, we are mainly focusing on the Newark community. So we send out our flyers mostly to Newark community members. And in order to advertise, there are a lot of free tools that you can use, such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, eBlast, Constant Contact. You can have posters, you can have flyers, community announcements, free publications, press release, and then through that, there is also word of mouth. And lastly, we do a lot of outreach work. So me and Princeton, normally we go out to a lot of the community organizations, and we actually give them flyers and then describe the work that we're doing so that they're aware of our work and they would want to come in for the event even more. The day of the event, what you should do. So, if you're responsible for a setup of the event, you need to arrive at least 2 to 3 hours early, just so you can go over the logistics with the person that's handling the venue. You need to also wear comfortable clothes and shoes. You need to bring, all the event information and contact information that you have. You need to greet volunteers and staff, and then brief them about the event so that they're aware of what's going on. Examine the venue to make sure all details are covered. Make sure that the sound, lighting, video, everything is set up before the event. And then just, make sure that there's a setup registration table, there's an information table, there is a food table, and then just as last minute logistics, just set up the overview of the event. And then after the event, you need to make sure that all your invoices have been paid, so there aren't any back and forth with the person that you hosted it with at the space. You need to as a best practice, you should always send thank you notes to the participants, volunteers, staffers, and sponsors, and the person that's in charge of the venue, so that, again, to build that long-term relationship and partnership. You need to hold meetings with your team to review the event so that you can go over the successes and some suggestions that you can do to make the event even better the next time. You need to make a list of items for your next event and make sure that everything, you have a binder or a computer folder where you have all the contracts, receipts, meeting notes, copies of flyers all at one place. And lastly, pat yourself on the back because you're done with the event and you did a great job. This is just even more thorough event checklist that we use for our big events. So, as you can, I don't think you can see, but we have, name of the event, date, if you have a budget, what's the venue and location, what does your guest list look like, save the date needed, is it needed to send that out, invitations, are speakers needed at the event, what is some of the program and agenda of the event, and if there is any press or media that's covering the event. Do we have photographers? Do we need volunteers? What's the menu look like? If there's parking, audio and visual. And at the end, for our big events such as the gala, we actually ask for evaluation. So people to evaluate our event so that we can make it better for the next time. And yeah, that's about it. Any questions or concerns? We're good.
So taking your programs and your initiatives to that next step of event planning is essential. It's more than just, believe it or not, even this. I kind of joke about just feeding you guys pizza. It's more than just like buying a pizza. There's a lot of moving pieces in terms of space, seating, who's going to do what, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of moving pieces into that, and sometimes we kind of take that for granted because what one of my mentors in college, he called it, making the sausage. You never know how the sausage is made, you just eat it. So this what she was talking about is making the sausage, the behind the scenes logistics of, I think I may have sent out 100 emails about this event. And that's tracking the emails, all of you that are replying all times of day and night. I have to coordinate all that. I have to facilitate this. I had to have somebody at the check-in, so I'm like, oh man, I need somebody. Hey, niece, drive down from William Patterson and sit at the table. So there's a lot of pieces that go into these events. And the more robust your event becomes, the more pieces that are involved. So we want you guys to expand into your communities and start to have events where you can draw in people from your communities to come and be a part of this. And because of that, you will need to have that checklist. You will need to go through who's going to send out the invitations. Are we sending paper or digital? What kind of meal are we going to have? You know, what kind of drinks? Setup, breakdown. Who's transporting what? You know, I wanted name tags today. I was driving up today and I'm like, forgot name tags. So those types of little things can slip your mind when you have events like this. We did folders, we did bags. The folders that we were going to order didn't get done, so we had to change that plan. And then all these types of things that you guys have no idea how long it happened and what it took to do. It took us a long time to do. That little logo that you guys see on the agenda took us a while to even get that approved. So there's a lot that goes into these things that you guys aren't aware of at a lot of events that you guys attend. So hopefully, you know, I know it's the after lunch kind of woes. So and there were no questions for Madasra, but take that information in and we'll send that out. And I want you to kind of go through and look at that, because the expectation is when you do an event and you put that coalition logo on there, now you're representing not only yourself, but every other university here, as well as the Institute. That's what this coalition is. It's not just you anymore. So you can't put a garbage program together, because you're not just representing William Patterson, you're representing Rutgers Newark, Rutgers New Brunswick, Rutgers Camden, Monmouth. Everybody here that signed on to this coalition, as well as my institute, is now tied into you. So that's the way you have to take this. That's the importance of that event plan. So please take heed to that. At your leisure, we're going to send that out. Hopefully when you're not so sleepy with pizza and you can digest it a little bit better, because the expectation is that you will be able to get not only city but state. You guys will be able to put together a forum and tell Governor Murphy, like, we need you on our campus, and he says, yes, I'll be there. And that will take event planning, a thorough amount of event planning. You can't just send them an invitation and just say, yeah, Phil, yeah, this is James. Yeah, just pull up to the Paul Robeson, yeah, we'll walk you in. No, there's a lot of pieces that will go into having the governor on your campus. So hopefully you guys will take that information, digest it to heed. So our next and last presenter, she is, if Madasra is the spine, she is definitely like the eyes and ears of the Institute. She does so much. So a lot of the materials that you guys have in the bag, she is responsible for all that. She won't take credit, because she'll say, I don't write it, you guys do all the hard work, but she takes our ideas and makes them realities. So as I have an idea, she creates it. When it comes to digital copies, when it comes to video, when it comes to the media, anything that has to do with us projecting outside of the Institute, her eyes have to be on it. And she is so humble, but she is so great at what she does. So she's going to cover probably one of the most critical pieces that I thought will be relevant to you, like your social media and your communication campaign. Because honestly, let's be honest, some of you are very irresponsible with your social media. And we need for you guys to find a way, especially when it comes to social justice, to be more responsible and more accountable about what you put out there and how you put it out there. If you put it out there irresponsibly, whatever your message is done. It's gone. I don't care how credible you are, if you just put out a bad message and nobody wants to hear you moving forward. So she is my subject matter expert on this, so she handles all of this. She's blushing and she does that all the time, but that's because she's amazing and she will amaze you guys. Oh, stop it, James. She does this all the time. So come on, little Elizabeth.
So let me.
Did your computer go to sleep again?
Yeah, I'm really bad at technology.
I don't know whose phone this is.
Mine.
Oh, okay. I was like, hello? No. Hello? What are you calling your phone?
No, I was gonna talk to you.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you for that very, very kind introduction, James. My name's Elizabeth, and I'm the communications director for the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. So I get to work with all of the amazing presenters that you've seen today. I also teach a class at Rutgers on the Livingston campus on wrongful convictions. Because I spent most of my career working on wrongful convictions, I worked at an organization called the Innocence Project. Has anyone heard of that and what they do? wrongfully convicted. And before that, I worked as a journalist. So I say all of that not because I think my biography is that interesting, it's not, but I say it because it actually is the framework that I'm going to use today for our conversation. And I know it's late in the day and you guys have been listening a lot, so I'm going to try to make this really interactive for you. So I give that as my background because my job at the Innocence Project was in some ways very similar to the job I have now, which was my job was to screen cases of people who wanted us to represent them. I'm not an attorney. Like I said, my background is in journalism. And so my job was to really rewrite the narrative of someone's case to convince management and our attorneys that we needed to take this person's case. And this work really informed how I approach communications and my strategies and the strategies we develop as a team at the Institute. So let me see if I can work this. I did it. So there was this quote, and if the attorney knew that I use this whenever I present on communications, she would not be very happy with me, but I use it because it's so perfect. So the way the Innocence Project used to set up their screening process is the team I was on, the intake team, would conduct an investigation of a case, a paper-based investigation, which means we looked at the documents, right? We looked at the police reports and the trial transcripts and the autopsy reports if it was a murder. And we corresponded extensively with the person seeking help to understand their claims and to understand their ideas about the case and how their innocence can be proven. And to also ask them about evidence that was damning, that made them look guilty. And we would present this to the legal team and to management. And there was this conflict between our team and the legal team where we were saying, we don't know if this person, most of the time, we don't know if this person is innocent or guilty, but our job is to get testing to find out. And the legal team would say, we want evidence, we want a case where innocence screams from the page. That would be evidence. I told you, Princeton, I had a typo in mine, and here it is. So I bet everyone noticed mine and everyone noticed yours. So we want cases where innocence screams from the page. And that was the tension, right? Is we were saying test it and find out what happens, that's our job. And they were saying we want cases where we know before testing if this person is guilty or innocent. A very, very tiny percentage of cases. And the problem with that is they acted as if the facts are the same no matter how you frame them. And of course that's not true, right? And so you might see this, you'll see headlines where there's an exoneration and everyone's, oh my goodness, how could this have happened? How could this injustice have happened for 20 years? Well, it happened for 20 years because the story was being written a certain way where the person was guilty. What we tried to say is, depending on how you write the story, the person will look very, very innocent and like this is a tragic injustice, or the person will look very, very guilty. So I want to start by talking about a case, and I promise I will circle this back to communications, I promise. I want to start by talking about a case named, of a man named Carl Chapman from Chicago, Illinois. Does anyone know of this case? Okay. That makes sense. It was more a Chicago case. So I went to Rutgers, yay, for my BA, and it was a wonderful experience, and right on this campus. And then I worked for a few years, and then I went to graduate school for journalism in Chicago. And my job was to find and report on stories from the Cook County Courthouse. And as you guys may know, there have been a lot of wrongful convictions that have come out of that courthouse. And one of them was a man named Carl Chapman, who I actually watched his case unfold. As I was watching it, it became clear, actually, that this was one of those rare cases where you can see that it's a wrongful conviction as it's occurring. It was a rape case. Carl was homeless. He was accused and ultimately convicted of raping a white woman in an office building. And I mention her race because it was a cross-racial identification. Does anyone know what that is? Yeah, could you tell us?
This is solely based on my binge watching of like SVU.
Go for it.
But
yeah.
I don't know how right this is, but from what I understand, it's that when you have a white or a victim that's trying to identify someone from another race, it's often like it like gets mixed up, I guess, because I don't know. I guess with that difference.
Yeah, studies have shown that people are not as good at identifying people that they perceive as being from other races as they are as their own. So eyewitness misidentification is the leading cause of wrongful convictions in sexual assault cases, and it's even more unreliable if the victim and the perpetrator are of different races. So we had that. He was also severely mentally ill, and there was a confession, an alleged confession, that was written in the police officer's hand, and clearly not in his language. There were other items as well. So, to my sort of shock, the local newspapers did not highlight what I saw as a really tragic injustice kind of unfolding before our eyes. And so this is, and I want to just talk to you guys about this. So this is the news report before he's exonerated. It says, after the victim picked him out of a lineup, and this is very representative, after the victim picked him out of a lineup, he was charged with aggravated criminal sexual assault. The testimony came after Assistant State's Attorney, that's just their phrasing for the prosecutor, Jacob Rubenstein called Chapman a hunter, quote, stalking his prey. Defense attorney Thomas Brandstratter told jurors no physical evidence links his client to the crime, and that emphasis is added for me. What kind of story is being told here? If you're just reading the paper, what do you think about Carl Chapman? What do you think about this case? What kind of impression is being given to you? Yeah?
There's severe prejudice. If you look at Chapman, and he classified as a hunter, and then from there he proceeds to say that he's stalking his prey, that allows the reader to envision someone who is not, if that was published in the newspaper, that would not be an appropriate way to present someone who's supposed to be equal on both sides. And that just furthers the fact that he's probably going to be more likely to be guilty.
Okay, so it gives the impression that this report is giving the impression it's tilted towards the prosecution's view more than the defense. And yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say that it like very much dehumanizes him by calling him like a hunter stalking prey. It makes it seem like it's not even a human, like a hunter and stalking prey is something that like animals do. Like it's not something that. So
yeah, that's a great point, right? It's characterizing him as an animal, as something other than human, right? What else do we get from this? Yeah.
You wouldn't know he's mentally ill.
Yes. Exactly. There's no context. And this is something that came out post-exoneration, but it was a fact known pre-exoneration. Carl was severely cognitively limited. So the idea that he was even able to plan out what ended up being, according to the state, a somewhat elaborate attack, it flew in the face of the facts that we knew then. Anything else that you guys notice about this? So yes?
No evidence linking him to the crime should have been the very first statement. It's like an afterthought.
So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. So not only is it down, right, and that's very indicative of all of the coverage of this case, right? It would be prosecutor, 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 defense, prosecutor, prosecutor, prosecutor. But notice how they say it. Defense attorney told jurors no physical evidence links him to the crime, as if this is his opinion, right? Right? It's not just a fact. It's real, so I'm really, really glad you mentioned that. Anything else? Is there another hand? No. Oh, Ron! Sorry, Ron and I work together at the Institute.
In line with it's at the bottom, the victim identified him according to the very first sentence. So the very first sentence marks him guilty, whereas the last sentence marks him, maybe, somebody's opinion he's not.
Right. Maybe a sleazy defense attorney is just trying to get him off, right? Absolutely. And the other thing that we notice about this is, again, and what's your name? Netza. Did I say it right? Netza, sorry. It's a very beautiful name that I have. So the other thing was the lack of context, right? So here we have an identification case, and at this time, this was in 2003, 2004. A lot was known about wrongful convictions then. Actually, it had been a huge issue in Chicago specifically. They had this rash of wrongful convictions. So we don't know anything new now that we didn't know then about wrongful convictions. context is completely missing about false confessions, right? About the vulnerability of a mentally ill, severely cognitively impaired man, and about cross-racial identifications, which, as I explained, right, is just identifying someone who you perceive to be of a different race or ethnicity than you are. And sorry, did you have something?
Yeah, they listed the full names of the attorneys, but not the person that was accused. So.
Oh, you know what? That's my fault.
Oh.
That's my fault. I did it. But you know what? Actually, it's interesting because I do an exercise with my class with wrongful convictions, and it's a similar exercise, but I make sure to only use their last name because I'm actually trying to dehumanize them because I'm trying to show that this is how we often perceive people accused of crimes. Once you use a first name, like I say Carl, right? Very different from Chapman, right? Become more of a person. So post-exoneration, so Carl is exonerated. It's a very, very long and complicated story of how he's exonerated. It's not a DNA test. It's not a DNA case. Basically, what happened is they had the same evidence before trial. They just looked at it a different way after trial. There was some new information that came to light. Nothing that, well, first of all, I think some of the new information they actually knew ahead of. I think they knew previously, and I think that there is some evidence the prosecutor's office looked the other way. But this is a case where we have pretty much the same facts viewed through a totally different lens afterwards. So post-exoneration, this was the lead of a news story. From the moment Carl Chapman was arrested in a clerk's rape at the Daly Center in May 2002, doubts existed about his guilt. No forensic evidence connected Chapman to the crime, and officials could not explain how he had slipped out of the building undetected. So how do we see these two stories being told differently? Yeah, Joseph.
The last sentence of the first paragraph, specifically officials cannot explain how he had slipped out of the building undetected. You're automatically assuming that he was there at the time of the crime. And if that was the story that was presented, that's terrible.
Yeah, so I think that's a really, really interesting point. And I think what they're trying to say is that the story was that even though this was a very secure building that was under a lot of surveillance, it was alleged that Carl left the building, but that there was no record of him ever leaving the building after the assault. And so actually what they're saying, and they don't say it in a very clear way, but what they're saying is that how could he have actually left the building if there's no record of it? And this was something that was known before Carl was convicted, right? Before he was even arrested, they knew that there was no record of him ever leaving the building. That was just something that was never raised as part of his story, right? So they're saying that this is actually a reason that points towards his innocence. And again, something that was known before. Anything else? Yeah. And what's your name?
Christabel. The part that said doubts existed about his guilt, that makes me think that you guys already knew that there was additional evidence, but they never took it into consideration. So that makes you just wonder how many people have gone through this as well.
Absolutely, right? And I think that's a really, really good way to look at it. And the other thing that I'm going to admit, when I read this news story, I got really angry because I thought, doubts existed about his guilt. Where were you guys 12 years ago when the guy was being railroaded, right? Where were you? You could have stopped this injustice, but you didn't. Doubts existed about his guilt. Why? Because now authorities say he's innocent. Now you can look back and say that doubts existed. Where were you then? Doubts were never part of the news coverage, of the original news coverage. There was one columnist who raised some doubts, but the official news coverage, there were no doubts. What else do we notice about this that's different? Yeah.
The emphasized part, no forensic evidence connected Chapman to the crime, is no longer an opinionated statement. It's now a factual statement presented. So I think that makes a huge difference on his, the substantial evidence that makes him,
Exactly. Right, and my friend back there who raised, can you raise your hand, my friend too? Exactly. Right? That's a huge difference. One is your sleazy defense attorney saying it, and the other is it's just stated as fact, right? Anything else you guys notice? I think you guys got all of the major things, but yeah, Ron.
One thing, it doesn't mention he was severely handicapped, but by inference it says officials could not explain how he slipped out of the building undetected, which also means he didn't sign back in.
Right.
know. So if you didn't, if you had to slip out and then slip back in, that shows a cognitive ability that he simply didn't have.
And that's a really good point. And the other thing, actually, and this is in the other post-exoneration coverage, they talk about his very limited cognitive abilities, and they talk about that in the context of his confession. Where was that before? Same facts, right? Just presented very differently based on the conclusion. One is a conclusion of guilt, one is a conclusion of innocence, right? So how many of you guys have heard of the Central Park 5 case? Okay, does anyone want to give like a quick summary of that case? Yeah.
So basically it was in Central Park, and there was a white woman that was, she was raped and beaten, right? And I think there was two groups of kids running around at the time. One was primarily like Latino and black, and I'm not sure about the other one, but the kids were rounded up by the police that were Latino and black, and basically they were sent into the police station 24, 48 hours. I think one had a parent show up, the other ones didn't, and they basically signed confessions to leave because they just wanted to go home and get out of there, and the police said that they were able to go home once they signed a confession, so they did.
Exactly, yep. And I don't know if anyone is old enough to remember this case. I do. I grew up in New Jersey. And this was, you almost can't talk about the media and racism and changing the narrative without talking about the Central Park 5 case. That was a great, and your name?
Brandon.
Brandon, that was a great explanation, Brandon. So this was the case of the decade, of the century. These now men were children between the ages of 14 and 16 years old, exactly as Brandon said. They were rounded up by the police. They had been part of a big group of kids that were sort of causing mischief in the park that night in Central Park. This occurred in New York. As the kids are being brought in, the police learn that there's been a really vicious rape of a white woman who turns out to be an investment banker in her late 20s. She miraculously survives the attack, which no one really expected her to do. The kids are brought in, they're interrogated for upwards of 24 hours. Most of them actually do have their parents present. Their parents were actually used by police to coerce the confession out of them. They were all told, if you confess, you can go home. They confessed, and they were convicted in the press within hours of their confessions. So these were who the kids really were. This was Raymond Santana. He was only 14, popular, liked drawing. This was Antron McCrae. He was 15, very shy, lived in Harlem with his mom, very tiny, 5'3", 98 pounds. This was Yusuf, who's become one of the most outspoken of the Central Park 5. He was only 15, very, very talented artist, actually accepted at LaGuardia High School, which is, of course, one of the most prestigious art schools in the country. Corey Wise. Corey is the oldest of the group, but in some ways the most vulnerable and really kind of the most heartbreaking of the group. He was just 16. He had hearing problems, which it's alleged were actually caused by physical abuse. He was under the care of foster care at the time, had some cognitive disabilities. His reading level was lower than it should have been. He was very emotionally stunted, described as a gentle kid. And lastly, Kevin Richardson. He was musical, quiet, considered the baby of the family, and only 14. So this is who they really were, right? They were also innocent of this crime. But this is how they were portrayed in the press, right? So I'm sure you guys may have seen this. President Trump took this ad out. This was before their conviction, actually. They had just been arrested, saying that these children should be executed for this crime that it turns out later they didn't commit. Mayor Koch, the mayor of New York at the time, said anyone who committed this rape is not a child, making a reference to how young they were. David Dinkins, who went on to become the first black mayor of New York, and as of now, the only black mayor of New York, called them urban terrorists. Bob Herbert, who is a black progressive columnist, wrote for the Times for many years, mocked them. He called them teenage mutants. He called one a pipsqueak. He mocked another one because he couldn't afford bail and he couldn't afford a sports coat at trial. And Pat Buchanan, who is a presidential speechwriter and then became sort of a pundit on Fox News, called them barbarians. And this is how they were portrayed day after day after day in the press, right? Park marauders call it wilding, wolf pack's prey. So how do we see them being portrayed here? What kind of language is being used to portray these kids? And again, all of this came out within days of their arrest. So how do we see them being portrayed here? Yeah.
It's again a dehumanization of who they are. So they're treated as animals, hunters, people that pose a great threat and like a calculating threat, and almost more like monstrosities, as like being monsters, as opposed to being teenage children.
Exactly, exactly. There was actually one columnist who said, you know, we can't even call them a wolf pack because wolves have more honor than they do, right? There was one columnist, I think it may have been Peter Hamill, who's this very celebrated New York City columnist who said that. What else do we see in terms of the coverage here and how they're being portrayed? What does it leave the reader thinking? Yeah, guilty, right? Absolutely, guilty. What else? Yeah.
Even just the pictures that they have up, like that one, like he's just in the somebody just in the woods, like. What, like it just doesn't. It's not necessary. Doesn't make sense to the.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's like it's creepy and it's spooky, right?
Yeah, it just
Absolutely.
doesn't match.
Right, because compare that to that, right? Or that, right? These are different kinds of ways we can portray them, right? And actually, in terms of pictures, that's another one, right? The so-called perp walk, which is usually staged for the media of a suspect behind, arms behind his back, cuffed, and rape suspects, jailhouse ghost. She wasn't nothing. Anything else? Yeah.
I feel as though they're viewed as powerless, like they're really a risk to society, and like these pictures don't depict them as young children. Just even if they're doing something wrong, it's a park, it's a huge park, and are you saying that youth can't play in the park without being pictured as savages or somebody that's going to attack an innocent white woman? I feel as though it's disgusting and stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other impressions? Yeah.
It eliminates the idea that they actually have other lives, because reading that you would never think that they went to one of the kids went to LaGuardia or plays saxophone. You would never even think about that at all.
Exactly, right? It gets back to that dehumanization that you guys have been talking about and taking on. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else? Yeah.
It's basically convicting them of doing it, but there's really no evidence that really points to being them, but they're still trying to make it look.
Absolutely, right. So guilt, right? We don't see innocence screaming from the page, right? The way the story is being told, they're guilty. And was there a hand in the back?
I think they're playing on emotions too, so they're using all this language to kind of bring emotion out of people. Emotions are involved. Hard to see the facts and actually go beyond actually find out what really happened.
That's it. I'm glad you made that point. I hadn't thought of it, but using emotions and the language we use, that's something I'm going to talk about. That's something we can use to advance social justice, right? We can play on emotions too with hopefully better social justice oriented campaigns, right? Not racist campaigns aimed at convicting kids of color who didn't commit the crime. Is there? Matt, yeah.
And just to sort of go one step beyond just playing on people's fears, it's also pretty clear that there's many people who are trying to use this case to cast aspersions on all black people, right? In the city, and just push this anti-black agenda using this case.
Absolutely. Actually, when I showed this coverage in my class, I said, okay, what do you guys think? And the kid in the front raised his hand, and the first thing he said was, it's racist. And I was like, yep, that pretty much sums it up. Absolutely. Yeah.
Also, looking towards the future, even if let's say they didn't do this, it seems like now that they have that stigma on them or they have that label on them, so that's all people are going to perceive. They're not going to know all the positive things that you're going to say, oh, you were accused of sexual assault, and even though you weren't found guilty or anything, people are still going to associate you with that
like the labels that have been given to you, that like even afterwards, like they will live with that for the rest of their lives, what they went through, the labels, what people think. People might not even believe, like, you know what I mean? Like people can say like, oh, well, they still might have, like, you know what I mean? Like they'll live with everything that they like went through for the rest of their lives, and the labels and everything.
So the story's going to remain the same, even if they're exonerated, right? And that's what happened to them. And that's why I'm so glad you guys made this point. So this is more, right? It's just more of the same. Teen gang rapes jogger. So this is the headline when they're exonerated. What happens is that the true perpetrator confesses to the crime. DNA testing is conducted. I should note, actually, there was semen found at the time of the case. There was semen found on the victim's vaginal swab, semen found on her sock that didn't match any of the boys, didn't match any of their friends that they were in the park with that night. This was brought to trial anyway, with the theory that it must have been the sixth perpetrator we didn't find. A man named Matthias Reyes had a sort of crisis of conscience and confessed to the crime. DNA testing was conducted and he matched that unidentified profile that they had never been able to identify at trial, and the now young men were exonerated as a result of this really incredible confession. This never would have happened otherwise. And this is the headline in the New York Times. December 15 to 21, National Jogger Case Reversal. That's it. Yeah.
I feel as though they didn't want to admit that they were wrong for their old titles, so they kind of were like, okay, we'll fix it, but like jogger case reversal, when it's so much more than that. Like 5 men, their lives are over. Like not over, I wouldn't take that back. Their lives aren't over, but so much of their lives, so much of their childhood is taken from them, stolen from them, just because they were accused of something that they did not even do. And now you just say a jogger case, it was reversed. Right. They can't get those years back. Like, it's so much more than just the reversal. And then they just say December 15th to 21. That's any day. That could happen. That does not say the year. That doesn't say what happened. Like, they need such a stronger title than that, because no one's going to read that. Everyone's just going to overlook that title, because I wouldn't read it. No, I was just overlooking, and no one would even know that everyone made this big, the system made this big giant mistake on these 5 men's lives, and no one is admitting to anything. It's just a reversal.
And that's a really, really, really great point. And I know there are other hands up, and this is such a great problem to have, and it makes me so excited. But I will just say, because I want to just make sure I round this out. So, right, so this is the story. This is the story for years. In 2002, they're exonerated, everyone gets released, nobody knows. Nobody knows they're exonerated, right? And then Ken Burns, a white documentary filmmaker who has made a million sort of Emmy award-winning documentaries, really brilliant filmmaker. And I say he's white because I think I think race has everything to do with this case. And I think it has everything to do with the fact that they were finally publicly vindicated. He makes this extraordinary documentary about their case. And he is the first one to argue really forcefully that they are victims and that they're innocent. At the time the documentary is made, one of them, I think it was Antron McCrae, his life had been so destroyed by this, and he'd run from it for so long, he actually refused to have his face shown in the documentary, even though he was exonerated, exactly as you were saying, no one knew.
You just don't want to be known as that person.
Exactly.
Who was even accused of it, because then people ask you questions like, well, why were you even there? Like, you know, and then people never really believe you. You're still going to always be looked at as those men.
And that really was the story. You're exactly right. That really was the story until this documentary. This documentary changed everything. They became the Central Park 5. It was no longer the Central Park jogger case. They became the headline. The injustice that happened to them became the headline. And so Raymond Santana has been quoted as saying, for so long we didn't have a voice, but this documentary is giving us our voice back. I strongly encourage you guys to watch this documentary. It is heartbreaking, it is beautifully done, and you see a lot of them speaking.
What's it called?
It's called, I think it's actually called the Central Park 5.
Yeah.
And it's just phenomenal. So I say all of that, right, because this is our job, right? Our job is to make that documentary, right? Our job is to change the narrative and to change the story that's being told and to frame the story differently, right? So in the Carl Chapman case, we had the same set of facts over here, but depending on how they were framed, he either looked very vulnerable and very innocent and very much a victim, or he looked like a stalker hunting his prey, right? Central Park 5, same thing. Either they looked like kids who were the victim of a racist media and a racist criminal justice system, who had their lives stolen from them, accused of a crime they didn't commit, or they looked like savages roving the park looking for victims to terrorize, right? And that's our job. Our job is to frame the story, because there's no such thing really as a case where innocence screams from the page. There's no such story as an issue that just, that will automatically motivate you or you'll be able to sell it to someone else. It's all about how you sell it and how you frame it, right? So I say this, we change the narrative, we create and frame the story, and we tell our story. And I put it twice, not a typo, Princeton. I put it twice because we keep telling our story over and over and over and over again. And I'm gonna say one thing. So we started a campaign to restore voting rights for people with convictions, right? And maybe that really energizes you because you care about that issue. But our job is to frame it in a way for people who don't follow the issue, who haven't thought about it before, who it hasn't been something important to them. And so we have to think of a way, how do we do that, right? Because again, an issue doesn't automatically scream from the page. That's our job to do. So I want to, and actually I said this as my example, but I'll give it to you guys. So I just wanted to do like a little exercise. So what story do you guys want to tell? What issue is important to you? I put as an example eliminating discrimination against people with convictions when they're applying to college. Is that a good one? Can we go with that? All right, we'll go with that one. I like that issue. So what's our goal with this? This is our top line message, right? We want to eliminate discrimination. So what's our goal?
Your goal is to destigmatize the people with those convictions and to tell a story that those are people who committed a crime or something happened to them in the past and now they're on a good track and they shouldn't be held back from doing something that's going to elevate their community or society.
Absolutely. So we're trying to humanize them, right? We're trying to tell their story. And maybe we want to, of course, also find out how is discrimination occurring? Is it occurring and is there a box you check? Is there a background check, right? What are the different, we want to do some research, like Princeton was saying, about how is discrimination occurring and what are our solutions to that, right? You always want to propose solutions to it. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of those narratives about people who are convicted, especially wrongfully, a lot of those start with the crime, about them whether they were there by circumstance or not even there at all. So I feel like it should be about the person themselves, how they got into whatever circumstances that they might have been in at the time, or how even they were even targeted in the first place. It should be about the person and not about the crime. So that way, people cannot associate them with that crime.
That's a really brilliant point, and it gets back to how we frame the story, and we frame the story to win someone over to our side, right? And we start by Mark was saying before, I apologize. As Mark was saying before, right, we start with the person. And I once went to a lecture about how to write a legal brief when you're arguing for someone's innocence, and they made exactly that point. They said, don't start with the crime, start with the person. This is a veteran, he was homeless for many years, and then you walk into how they became involved in the justice system. But you start with the person, absolutely. You humanize them, right? Yeah.
I think that we live in a society where education is very valued, but we don't appreciate education in the rehabilitation process. So by not allowing people who have felony convictions or any conviction at all to continue their education, not allowing New Jersey STEM for example, in Trenton is a monumental issue, and how are we expecting these men to be released without any rehabilitation at all? And if we value education enough, as much as Sally Mae says we do, then how are we not valuing it in that aspect? And I think that definitely has to do with the goal here.
Right, so we've got a lot of different ways to approach this issue. We know our top line message is to eliminate discrimination against people with convictions. We can use different tools to kind of get us there. We can use the personal stories of people who have been impacted. We can talk about it as a rehabilitation issue and a reentry issue, right? Absolutely. And like you were saying also, right, we can introduce people to the person as a way to get them to care about the issue, right? And so this is just, you know, you want to determine your elevator speech or theme, and that means you want to be able to, that if I meet Mark in the elevator and Mark says, oh, you know, hey Elizabeth, what have you been up to? I say, oh, I've been working on this really great campaign. Before we hit the ground floor, I should be able to tell Mark what I'm working on, and he should understand it. So keep it really simple. A friend of mine who's a journalist says, you know, you want a book idea, you can fit on a Post-it note. Same thing with a campaign, right? Keep it simple. Keep your goals simple and your top line messaging simple. So, right, the what is what your campaign is about. The why should I care about this? And of course, and this point was made really beautifully by Princeton before, right? Your language matters. And your language matters obviously because we want to respect people's dignity, but like my friend in the back was saying, it also, it matters because it can persuade people to be on your team, right? And so there's a difference between saying, you know, well, this is a public safety issue, and that's why we have to do these background checks, versus you framing it as, actually, you're just discriminating against students, right? Not even people with convictions, you're just discriminating against prospective students. You're discriminating against applicants, right? So a background check versus discrimination, using a word like felon versus a word like student, all of that matters. So here are some of the strategies we use to change the narrative, and sometimes to create the narrative about issues that we care about. One thing we do is we will write a sign-on letter, which pretty much has our top-line messaging. Here's our issue, here's why you should care about it. And then we circulate it to everyone in our network. And we do that because one, we're trying to build community on an issue, and two, because we want to show the people in power, right, the elected officials, or if it's the Rutgers administration, we want to show them, you're not just fighting us, you're fighting all of these other people back there. So for example, for the Voting Rights Restoration Campaign, we have a sign-on letter saying people in prison, on parole, and on probation should have the fundamental right to vote. And we always say fundamental right to vote, right? Because that's our language, that's our narrative. Voting is not a privilege, it is a fundamental right. And we hope if we say it enough, more people will start saying it, and we'll get that language into news reports. But we have about 90 organizations that have signed on, as well as elected officials. And we have people from the reentry community. We have actually, I think someone just came on from the corrections community, did Scott say? And so we have this, we don't just want it to be the usual suspects, right? We want to show that there's a lot of support for this. The other thing we do, and I won't go into this because Princeton did it so beautifully, is we publish briefs and reports. And you know, this might be challenging to do as a student because you have so many other responsibilities. So a workaround with this is just to do the research and to know your facts and to know your data and to be able to use that when you're talking about the human story, when you're talking about the person, put that in the context of data. And so you might include data on the educational benefits on lowering recidivism, right? Or the educational benefits for people, you know, in terms of rehabilitation, right? There's a lot of data that's already out there. Sometimes it's just up to you to kind of gather it and put it together. Be creative, hold rallies, hold demonstrations, right? I was trying to think of like a creative action for this item, and like everything I thought of was very aggressive, like, and I was like, I don't even know if that would be effective or would just be annoying. So I don't know, what would be like a really creative way to show, let's say, I don't know if Rutgers has a box. Does Rutgers have a box on this application? Have you ever been convicted today?
Yeah.
It is. You have to write it. A conviction statement.
So they do. Okay, so if you guys took this on, not that I'm saying you should, but if you took this on, what would be a really creative action you could do around this?
check the box.
Everybody check the box, right? All or none, right? Everybody check the box. Yeah?
Exactly. They gotta talk to us now.
Yeah.
You want to sit at the table so we can talk now. So now they won't want to talk.
Okay, so everyone check the box.
I think they could organize a protest in front of admissions.
In front of the admissions office. Okay. So go kind of right to the source in a way, or the symbolic source, right? The source is the president of the university, but we'll go to the symbolic source. I like that. Yeah.
I feel like you should do the research and then you should find a location to do it, because I don't think it's just the particular admissions. It might be the upper of like it. It could be like the board of trustees of the specific school. So you have to really see who you have to like target first to like for you to start making a claim.
That's a great point, right? You want to do your research to find out who is in charge of making this decision, and let's have our action put pressure on that target. Excellent point. Anything else? Any other ideas? All right, so we have some ideas about, oh yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say like take it to social media, take it to the media, like get people to hear, like as many people that will listen, like you tell them, there are people being discriminated against. This is not okay. Students deserve their right to education, and everybody checks the box, and you bring that to media, like you make sure that there are people there who are going to be able to broadcast what you're trying to put forward.
Exactly. And that's such a great point, right? Everything you do, you want to tell the media about. You want to send a press advisory in advance of an event, which pretty much just has the what, where, why, alerting them that the event is happening. On the day of the event, you want to send a press release, which has all of that what, where, why, logistical information, as well as quotes from your partners, right? This is where the sign-on letter becomes really handy, because suddenly you have a press release with quotes from maybe 4 different organizations. Maybe you got them, a local mayor to endorse your campaign. He or she can have a quote in there too. So everything you do, you want to make sure the media knows about, and you want to be accessible. I can't emphasize this enough. I used to be a journalist, and it's really important to respect their deadlines and to make their job as easy as possible. It will mean that you become a reliable partner for them. And so if a reporter does reach out to you and you miss the call them back right away. If you can't get the information right away, make sure, are we wrapping up? Make sure that you ask them. Like my first question is always, okay, what's your deadline? When can I get this to you? One last point is you want to publish op-eds showing the wide array of support that you have. So you want to publish op-eds by people who are impacted by the policy, by people in the faith community to frame it as a moral issue, by academics, by students, by law enforcement, right? You want to do all of this. And lastly, if you can, you want to organize editorial board meetings, which means that you're meeting with the editorial board of a paper, maybe of a student paper, and you want them ultimately to endorse your campaign. Social media, I didn't get a chance to talk about, and you can contact me with any questions. So thanks, guys. It's very, you guys are a great audience.
All right, thanks, Rockstar. So that was a lot of information, and you can see how the media impacts this particular space. So it's a very impactful arena to be in. So now this is kind of, we've dedicated some time to you. So now the information needs to come from you guys. So this is where I'm gonna have my two, I won't call them interns, they're our co-workers. We're gonna have Ron and Liz. So they're gonna help to kind of moderate a conversation with you guys. And we want the information coming this way. So I've got, all our partners and some of you, the academics in the back. We want to kind of jot down some of the information that you say so that we can find ways to support the issues that you are passionate about, some of the concerns that you want to work on, and see how we can either tie you into our work or tie you into other agencies' work. So this is your opportunity to be vocal, because we know that you guys do have passions outside of our 3 pillars. And now is that opportunity for you guys to kind of start to literally, I don't care if you scream it. Don't scream at Ron and Liz, but we need to make sure your voice gets up here. So please interact. Please interact. Like, this is, you guys have asked questions, but now this is, when I talked about that passion, I need to hear that passion now.